Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
I'm Steven Zuber.
I'm still
wait, damn it, no.
Jay Sticky.
I have to be Jay Sticky, so you can be Steven Zuber. I'm Jay Sticky.
And I'm Steven Zuber.
We did it. We swapped bodies.
Finally.
Nice.
All right, welcome to the show. I can't lead this like you can.
Oh, well, I mean, now
I already lost my footing.
Okay.
All right, do we want to start off with a funny anecdote, or do we want to jump right into the sequence posts?
Oh, that's a good question.
Funny anecdote.
Okay, then.
Decided. Okay, so...
Oh, just for the record, though. I'm actually Eneasz Brodsky. For people who are just listening for the first time, do you think there'll be many of those?
If you're a first-time listener, yes. Steven Zuber.
Jay Sticky.
Cool.
All right. So, my dad, his political leanings are right-leaning, which is fine. I didn't think he was fully stupid about it until I learned that he's not getting the COVID vaccine.
Oh.
He's been a smoker for 50 years.
Oh, my God.
Or 40-something, I don't know. But he also has a forged COVID vaccine card.
I'll be damned.
We thought nobody was going to do that.
He got one of these because we went to, and he's not a huge comedy guy. This all ties together, I swear.
Okay.
We went to Comedy Works last night because we bought the tickets for the show months ago. Christopher Titus, he's funny, and I hadn't seen any of his stand-up, at least in at least 10 years. But when I was a kid, he had like 3-season TV show that we all watched, me, my brother, and my dad.
Yeah.
And so my dad was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that guy. Let's go do this." And at least 30% of the show was him ripping into the dipshits who aren't getting vaccines.
Nice.
And so, he doesn't know that I know that it's a fake card.
How did you find out?
My mom asked, because I learned from my mom.
Uh-huh.
And it's, Comedy Works in Denver is smart. Through the end of this month, September, you have to either have proof of vaccination or a less than 3-day-old negative COVID test. At the end of September, starting 1st of October, nobody without a vaccine is allowed to come to the shows, which is cool.
I agree.
It's people in close quarters laughing.
Yeah.
So,
Especially the Denver one. That is a small, tight room.
Fortunately, the last 2 shows I've been to are Comedy Works South, the Denver Tech Center one, which actually seems to have been designed with having people there in mind.
Right.
It's not like they found this cool, grungy basement, and it's like, oh, we can fit some chairs in here.
I really like the cool, grungy basement vibe.
Me too.
Yeah.
It seems like the grungier and older the basement, the better comedy rep it has.
Yeah.
But still, I like the atmosphere of the downtown or the Denver Tech Center one more.
Okay.
Anyway, so he is ripping into the anti-vax, whatever people, and that was a lot of fun because I knew my dad was looking forward to this, and he seemed to enjoy the show anyway. I don't know if he took the jokes in good humor because they were not like
they were still
kill
funny.
These idiots.
I mean, yeah, it was kind of like it was pretty intense. It wasn't like friendly, jabs at the thing. It was like, no, you guys are a bunch of fucking dipshits. And why did this come up? I guess it was just the funny irony of, so I learned that he got a fake card the day before the show, and I was going to tell him, give him a piece of my mind about it, and didn't get a chance to, but Titus did it for me, so that was really fun.
Sometimes things work out.
It did work out, and I still plan to have a, more productive conversation with him about it, and explain to him that, look, man, it's not just about you. We don't want to watch you die.
Yeah.
You're in a high-risk group, and you're being a dipshit about this. You're pro-vaccine on everything. Your dad had polio maladies that lasted his entire life.
Oh, damn.
It's, this is...
Diseases are real. Vaccines work.
Well, and the thing is he knows that. It seems to be just this particular one. And I get it, the messaging has been stupid. Frankly, it would be hard to have possibly done it worse.
Right.
But if it was just purely more broadcast, this is evil mind control stuff or something, then at least then that could be dismissed as nonsense. But the messaging for the average muggle is just so mixed.
Yeah.
Especially if your average muggle gets their news from weird places. But anyway, I liked that, and I don't know. Everyone get your vaccines. Quit fucking around. That's where I'm at. So
Yeah.
All right, that was my funny anecdote. And Christopher Titus' new special. So it hasn't aired yet anywhere, but it's called Zero Side Effects.
Okay.
And is
it about the COVID vaccine?
Yeah, part of it. He had zero side effects from it.
Well, about most people.
Well, I mean, a lot of people got sick the next day or whatever, right?
I wasn't counting those.
Yeah.
I was thinking more long term.
I had 0 side effects.
Oh, nice.
It was great.
Cool.
Yeah, so his vaccine went fine, and then about half of it was about him getting dental work done in a very, again, it's story humor, not like a quick joke. So
yeah.
you gotta enjoy the special when it comes out. Find it eventually.
as long as we're talking about dads, I recently learned that my dad was part of a illegal mystery cult, a Gnostic mystery cult when he was younger. Because in Poland, since it was under the regime of the Soviets at the time.
Oh, did they have like government mandated religion?
Not mandated, but they had government religions that were government approved and religions that were not, and the ones that were not were illegal to practice. And he was Jehovah's Witness, and it was very much a Gnostic mystery cult in Poland because they had to hide underground and spread the knowledge secretly, and it was a whole thing. He was a rebel. I kind of understand a bit more where he was coming from now. He said that when he came to America, he was so disappointed by how over here it was just
allowed.
Not just allowed, but the religion didn't have all the mystery and coolness and rebellion behind it. It was just the man, producing literature and people going and giving their money and stuff just like any other religion.
This is funnier in hindsight because you told us a few years ago that you learned that he didn't actually believe any of the tenets.
Yeah.
So, but what's fun is being part of a secret society, kind of irrespective of what they say they believe, is fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's this is in defiance of the totalitarian regime, man. This is awesome.
We got to get Bayesianism declared illegal or something.
That would get us some more traction, I think, somehow.
Yeah. It's already unpopular.
Damn it.
Well, we're at the unfortunate sweet spot of being unpopular but not illegal yet. So
you could say that it's socially, I don't know. I'm trying to spin this into a good thing, but I'm just bumming myself out. Let's move on.
Okie dokie. That will be part of our topic later, but first, as usual, we will do the Less Wrong posts that we read every week. We also have some feedback. Should we do the feedback later, though? Yeah, let's do the feedback after the Less Wrong posts. Because I like having them up front. If people want to skip them, they can just skip the first part of the episode.
Yeah.
And hopefully they didn't miss your awesome dad anecdote. So the first post we're going to talk about is fake morality. This one is, it's, if you're, gosh, that's weird. I was about to say, if you're familiar with New Atheism, you're already kind of familiar with this thing. But on the other hand, there's some youngins out there now who weren't around for the New Atheism.
That was after some people's time, yeah. Weird.
And I think I've asked this before when, because a lot of these posts are around the age of the whatever atheism wars online. Mm-hmm. Is that still happening?
Not really.
That's kind of a relief. I think that
it
basically
changed. Now it's culture wars instead of atheism wars. The wokeism took the place of Christianity, and the membership drastically changed as people resorted themselves.
Yeah, I guess at the very least, I feel like this was never this was a fun time to be online, but I can't imagine there's anything new that's been brought to the conversation in the last 15 years. Right. So
we found new evidence that God does not exist.
Right. I guess ultimately, it is kind of open and shut, so it had to move on to something like, a culture war where you can just yell at other people for being bad, and there is no objective look, God doesn't exist kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, anyways, let's get into the actual post.
Yeah, so suppose Omega, of the famous guy who's so helpful with all those boxes it keeps throwing at us, makes you a credible threat that if you ever step inside a bathroom between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. in the morning, he'll kill you. Would you be panicked by the prospect of Omega withdrawing his threat? Would you cower in existential terror and cry, if Omega withdraws his threat, then what's going to keep me from going to the bathroom?
Which is very much a reflection of people who say if God didn't exist, what would stop people from killing and murdering and stealing and raping and all that?
Or more specifically, the threat of hell.
Yes.
Or God punishing you.
Yeah. And he says, which is to say, the very fact that a religious person would be afraid of God withdrawing its threat to punish them from committing murder shows that they have a revulsion of murder which is independent of whether God punishes murder or not. You don't hear them using the argument, if we did not fear hell and yearn for heaven, then what would stop people from eating pork? Which should sound just as forceful.
It's interesting because, back in the days of watching these debates online, occasionally you'd see people who would say that. Mm-hmm. Like, oh yeah, no, if God didn't exist, I'd do whatever I want. And then that kind
of... They were always Christians.
That's the kind of... Oh yeah, because the rest of us, we're not that concerned about God existing or mandating morality, and we're nice to people and don't murder them because we like people. And so the people who are like, oh yeah, I would rape and murder with abandon if God wasn't real. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to back away slowly while I keep my eyes on you as I leave the room.
I also usually don't believe them.
Yeah, I feel like that's dogma. Yeah. They're trying to make the point that everyone would
yeah, they I guess they just don't realize what a stupid point that is.
Yeah.
Another quote that was pulled out here.
That's not a quote. I should have put a little more context on it. This was a thing to consider because he's talking about fake morality. He's expanding the point a little bit. He asks to consider two philosophers who come to you with these two arguments and consider them for a second. One of them says,
you should be selfish because when people set out to improve society, they meddle in their neighbors' affairs and pass laws and seize control and make everyone unhappy. I can just hear David just grinning. Take whichever job that pays the most money. The reason the job pays more is that the efficient market thinks it produces more value than its alternatives. Take a job that pays less, and you're second-guessing what the market thinks will benefit society most.
And the other one says, you should be altruistic, because the world is an iterated prisoner's dilemma, and the strategy that fares best is tit for tat with initial cooperation. People don't like jerks. Nice guys really do finish first. Studies show that people who contribute to society have a sense of meaning in their lives are happier than people who don't. Being selfish will only make you unhappy in the long run. And, I don't know, maybe pause the podcast now and think about them for a second.
Yeah.
But then, once you have unpaused the podcast, you can continue listening to us.
So, the first philosopher is using strictly pro-social criteria to justify his recommendations. To him, what validates an argument for selfishness is showing that selfishness benefits everyone. The second philosopher appeals strictly to individual and hedonic criteria. To him, what validates an argument for altruism is showing that altruism benefits him as an individual.
Isn't that crazy? Like, one of them is arguing for selfishness, but it's the altruistic argument that being selfish is what helps everybody the best. And the other one is arguing for altruism, but he's using the selfish argument that it'll help you to be altruistic.
I mean, the thing that he doesn't point out, I mean, he does, but yeah, studies who show people who contribute to society have a sense of meaning in their lives and are happier than people who don't. I would overemphasize that point, or at least reemphasize it.
Right.
Like, as Harry so desperately tried to convince Voldemort, like, being nice makes people happy, assuming you're not brain damaged like Voldemort was.
But it is a selfish argument, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would sort of, call out
selfish in air quotes, not in the traditional use of the word.
Right.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Because, that already sort of presupposes selfishness is a vice, where if you're a utilitarian, you count as somebody. So if you're making yourself happy and other people happy, that's just on net more happiness. I don't see the issue. But some people just, I don't know. Some people being like, I have this really bad problem from my early childhood of actually deeply, selfishness is the worst. Pride is the worst. So trying to have any kind of self-love or self-regard is hard when you've sort of been taught to squint at that your whole life.
Oh, especially it can be overwhelming because there's only one you and there's a whole lot of other people, and so the mass of their combined desires outweighs your own, right? But
I don't think that it works that way.
No.
But yeah, well, okay. I think I brought up about how Eudolons sort of live in that person's experience, but that's beside the point. We're trying to figure out which of these people is the actual altruist. And then, who wants to read the answer?
Whichever one actually holds the door open for little old ladies.
Right.
And it's hard to see, in the first case, why, the one that talks about, the efficient market, picking your job and all that stuff, why would that person hold open a door for a little old lady? That little old lady can't really reciprocate holding the door open for you, given the premise of the argument, right?
Right.
So, do you do it because your peers are watching and you get, social perks? No, if you're alone and you see someone who needs help, you do it because you're nice and it makes you feel good.
I mean, I'm sure this was brought up by his interlocutor in Fake Selfishness, but I've heard similar things where people basically argue for standard altruistic morality, but frame it entirely in terms of selfishness. It was a big thing for Ayn Rand and her followers at the time to be like, look, if you were perfectly selfish, you would be this great person that gives to charity and helps ladies across the street all the time, which was a little, I mean, not literally true because they had a thing about charities and whatever, but it ended up being that you live your life the same way anyone else would as a good person.
You remember Brandon, my other groomsman that you met?
Yeah. He's got a similar thing, right?
Well, he was moving from Omaha to San Diego a couple weeks ago. And he was, I was like, it's going to be quite the drive. And he's like, yeah, I just bought Atlas Shrugged to listen to on the drive. And I'm like, oh, so you want to fall asleep and crash your car. And he's like, no, actually, it's riveting. He's read it before.
Yeah, I have too. I really do like it.
Awesome. Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not for everybody, but I found it very enjoyable.
Well, I asked you about that because I think you had said once that it was like one of the most important books that you've ever read. And then you were like, I'd asked you about that, and you're like, I don't recommend you read it.
Right.
And apparently it was for you at the time that you needed it, and that's awesome. Yeah.
They, I think, mentioned that in Methods of Rationality. We talked about that before too, where it's like Ron Weasley is one of the people who could possibly benefit from this.
Right.
I haven't read it. I think I might also be the kind of person that could benefit from it.
I think you
somebody who already has really low self-worth, self-esteem. Like,
I have a copy on my bookshelf. Would you like to borrow it?
Yeah.
All right.
Got God of War from Steven. I'm getting Ayn Rand from Eneasz. It's just like Christmas up in here.
Nice.
So you get to be a god and realize that you should be a god. Perfect.
I was hoping somebody would tie this together.
Cool.
All right.
So that is...
what was that sequence?
Yep. The next one is fake optimization criteria.
I had a brief thought experiment on fake morality.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. It was just, I didn't put it in the notes, but the fake morality... more broadly, is just like bad sources of like where to get your ethics, right? Mm-hmm. And I just remembered that there's a really good intuition pump from Dan Dennett, who I think coined the term intuition pump.
Did he? Cool.
At least he popularized it. But it was like the thought experiment was like, well, I've got my friend Jeff. I ask him what I should do, and well, why do you trust Jeff? Well, he's usually right about stuff, and like he's just got this nice, he's like a Santa Claus vibe, not just the beard, but also like in his joviality, Dan Dennett.
Santa Claus / like Socrates.
Thing going Socrates on. Is probably the one you'd prefer more. Mm-hmm. But
he's got the jolliness, whereas I hear Socrates was asked by a student, how can I become wise? And he held his head underwater until he was almost drowning, pulled him out and said, when you want wisdom as much as you want that air, then you will become wise.
Jesus.
I think Dan Dennett would probably not do that.
Probably not.
I think that was Socrates. It might have been Aristotle, but anyway.
In any case, I just liked that the idea of why would you trust this source? And, yeah, sure, maybe it's been credible to you in the past, but, what if Jeff says something counterintuitive to you? Shouldn't you second guess it? Mm-hmm. Maybe that's kind of like just an authority thing, too, but especially on questions that you're equipped to kind of look at yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And most people don't need if I want to go figure out what I really believe to be the age of the universe, it'd take me a lifetime of research and equipment, right?
Right.
If I really want to figure out what my stance is on capital punishment, I can kind of do that by myself with my eyes closed in my own house,
Really?
I can't.
I think you would.
Looking at data
you should
helps.
Talk with other people too.
Or at least get facts about it.
And looking at data would help too, but I can draw a lot of my conclusions from whatever I realize my first principles are in ethics. You know? I won't stick by that my original phrasing of that too hard, but I do think that many of us are equipped to answer a lot of these questions pretty well.
I think that probably your first intuition is right if you're pretty well calibrated on ethics already.
I think you guys are nuts.
But I was going to say also, you might come to the same conclusion, but like it's still super worth looking, facts about it and talking to people, because there's stuff you may not have known or ways of thinking about it that you may not have thought of before.
New arguments and new information for sure. I mean, I guess what I meant is like if you leave your meta-ethical axioms open to revision, but once you have those, like suffering is bad, making people happy is good, you can kind of draw where a lot of like the answers to ethical quandaries, quote unquote, just from those, right? I mean,
okay, so suffering is bad is kind of a given, but like, I think trusting your intuitions or even having intuitions will generally help most people get along just fine in their society. But I also think that societies can often be fucked up and wrong. And I just think, a statement like, yeah, your initial intuitions will probably get you most of the way there all the time is just completely crazy, because everybody in history ever could and probably did say that, and I think all of them were wrong, and we're probably wrong about stuff right now too.
There is the sort of pejorative of armchair psychology.
This is armchair morality. I'll briefly summarize why this was on my mind, because on the drive to Comedy Works yesterday, I was talking with my wife about she works with a lot of nurses who are anti-euthanasia, and I'm totally fine with any particular medical practitioner saying I don't feel like participating in whatever
hospice
thing.
workers, right?
Yeah. So weird job to get into if you don't want to help people help ease people's passing, but
I think they do, just not in that way.
in that particular way. But that's the weird thing. So the reason I said that I think you can get most of the way there from like just logically following what you actually believe about ethics is that, these nurses who she knows that will claim like, no, I think it should be illegal. This is terrible. I don't think that they actually believe that given their other beliefs about morality. Like, if you think that suffering is bad and you think that helping your patients is good, letting them, drown in their own vomit over the course of I don't know, however, die an agonizingly long, slow death or something. Yeah. You're actually causing harm. Yeah. Or you're allowing harm to happen. Maybe
or,
that maybe the action there.
Spend the last few weeks of your life with severe dementia.
Right.
Upset, confused all the time, and upsetting the entire family by having to interact with their dying relative who doesn't remember them.
Yeah, and have these nurses never had like a sick pet that like, look, Sparky had a great run, but
his life is like 99% pain right now.
Right, and it's going to go on for another 2 months maybe, or it can end peacefully here. Like many people have been in a situation where they've had to make the hard decision to ease a pet's passing, right? And so I guess what I'm getting at is that with these nurses, I suspect their actual complaint isn't that like I'm harming the patient. I think it's coming from another source of
I think it's the strong like anti-killing, anti-death probably.
Or if it's anti-death, they're in the wrong line of work. If it's anti-killing, maybe I think it's from some religious just
suicide
shoving
is
its way in there.
It's like a ticket straight to hell, apparently.
Yeah.
That always like just going on a small tangent about how religion was super confusing to me even as a child. It's like, so you're gonna be born into this world of suffering, and then you gotta like live a good life regardless of all these obstacles we put in your way and random shit happening all the time. And then you are judged and get to heaven, but where you'll like live in eternal bliss. And it's like, well, why don't we just skip that whole part? Just kill every baby as soon as it comes out of the womb or whatever, and then we all go to heaven. And it's like they had to. It was a necessary
adaptation.
Yeah, rule that they kind of had to stick in there to make sure that people don't just commit suicide left and right when life is miserable.
And I mean,
like we want people to believe this lie that there's this like land of infinite bliss that you go to after you die, so you don't feel bad about your own death and you want to do good things.
But we don't want them to believe it's so hard that they stop working here and paying taxes and shit.
It seems so obviously designed by human societies to benefit human societies that like it's just like, why would God, if there was such a thing as a God, why would he care about first of all this, and then secondly like what foods you eat, what fabrics you wear, which sex positions you're allowed to use, how you display the entrails of sacrificed animals. Check out that Old Testament shit.
I really think that the nurses probably very strongly do believe that euthanasia is wrong, and I don't think you could convince them with the reasoned argument. I would imagine that it probably happened because it's a good, it's good to have a prohibition on euthanasia that people don't choose from themselves, because then you can be like, oh yeah, that person obviously needs to be euthanized, and power can be abused, and then, that's spread to a whole, all euthanasia is wrong no matter what kind of thing.
Slippery slope came up.
Okay. I was going to say,
but right now, you can't, like I can with my pet, I can't say, look, my sick relative, they really want to die, but they won't be able to tell you that.
Right.
That's not how euthanasia works.
That's actually one of my big fears, that by the time I'll be, need to be put down, I'll be so gone mentally that I won't know it, and I'll just be hanging around, burdening the people I love for however many years, and not living any life worth living.
Don't worry about it. We're going to live forever.
That's sort of I anticipate that aging in 50 years will be different than it is now. So,
but I mean, these nurses have that intuition, and it may have been adaptive in a certain sense, and trusting that intuition actually leads to a lot of suffering.
Yeah,
that's my point. So I think that, but from what their like actual axioms about what they believe about suffering and their duty as a medical practitioner, I think that their conclusion, we should never help a patient ease their passing, I think that doesn't follow, right?
It's not coming from first principles. It reminds me of politics too, where like if you're for gun control, then you should be against abortion. Sort of,
they might be able to make a counter argument about the lines of, this is actually why it should be illegal in all cases, because the net suffering that it prevents by making it illegal is worth the sacrifice of a few people having to live a couple years in pain.
Maybe. I didn't want to get us too far down a rabbit hole, I guess. And so you have convinced me. I will do your ethics with your eyes closed in your bedroom. I will withdraw that. I'll put that up there much more tentatively and less confidently than I did initially.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to fake optimization criteria.
Yes.
I think the main point of this one is, and this first sentence is great because like every single word is a different link to a post that he did earlier, where he's like, yes, I hammer on about this a lot, and like scrolling over those links with my mouse, I was like, wow, we've read quite a few, and I don't remember half of these. This is terrible. But he's the main thrust being, our beliefs appear to match the evidence much more strongly than they actually do. If we could beat this fundamental meta-bias and see what every hypothesis really predicted, we would be able to recover from almost any other error of fact. And that, I think that's kind of like the main endpoint goal of Eliezer and rationality.
Yeah, I was going to say this is a perfect tie into the subject because it already lays it out here, but let's get more into this.
He says, our beliefs appear to match evidence much more strongly than they actually do. Mm-hmm. I think what it means is our beliefs appear to us to match the evidence.
Appear. We think that they do, yeah.
I just wanted to make that crystal clear.
Yeah.
All right.
That if we could actually see things without bias.
And then we get into some decision theory.
Yeah.
The mirror challenge for decision theory is seeing which option a choice criterion really endorses. We seem to have evolved a knack for arguing that practically any goal implies practically any action. Which is inconvenient for rationality.
Yeah, and he like then goes on to say, but obviously there's complications. Like, where could you possibly find something that isn't hopelessly complicated? He asks,
or sort of from the inside, how can you use a brain that's like miscalibrated in this way to figure out how to calibrate your own brain correctly when you're brains fixing brains, or trying to see brains.
The direct quote is, where is the standardized, open source, generally intelligent, consequentialist optimization process into which we can feed a complete morality as an XML file to find out what that morality really recommends when applied to our world?
XML.
Drum roll.
Don't like the XML, huh?
It's gross.
Yeah, okay.
I laughed when I saw that, but anyway.
It was great, yeah. Which is, what we were just saying about what would, the suffering applied to our world really say about the euthanasia thing. And I honestly think that we should allow euthanasia, but whatever, we're not going to that.
So it seems like it should be some kind of AI, but in fact,
he says, it's our old friend the alien god, of course.
Yay.
Natural selection is guaranteed free of all mercy, all love, all compassion, all aesthetic sensibilities, all political factionalism, and etc. He goes on for a while about what is free of.
It's free from lots of things.
Yes, because all it really cares about is how many grandchildren survive.
Now you might ask, are these case histories of evolutionary science really relevant to human morality? I ask in return, if we can't clearly see the result of a single monotone optimization criterion, if we can't even train ourselves to hear a single pure note, how will we ever listen to an orchestra? How will we see that always be selfish, or always obey the government, are poor guiding principles for human beings to adopt, if we think that even optimizing genes for inclusive fitness will yield organisms which sacrifice reproductive opportunities in the name of social resource conservation? Mm-hmm. And then, to train ourselves to see clearly, we need simple practice cases. And then that's the end of that one, but it goes into the next one, which we'll do next time, I guess.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
I actually kept reading. Uh-huh. I mean, I was reading these in preparation for the show, and I was just like, oh yeah, these are good. Mm-hmm. I find myself, I keep doing that, before doing the podcast, I read ahead.
Yeah. That's an interesting claim about decision theory. I mean, basically what he's saying is that humans can't do decision theory correctly due to our inherent biases, right? Because we may have a decision theory, but we don't apply it correctly to see what it really endorses.
Well, we can't do mental math well enough, and we're also already hardwired for social tribalism.
Yeah. Go along with our society and our loved ones.
And evolution driving us to, reproduce more.
Mm-hmm.
I think
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we can do better than what we've evolved to do and what society, like what we've been doing, right? Mm-hmm. We can be less wrong, maybe, if we put in the effort. But it's not like... There's different... I guess maybe it can't be perfect because our squishy meat brains aren't perfect calculators, but we can be better at it than we historically have been. Yeah.
Ideally, we can, learn this martial art of rationality, but also we can tinker with, the source code eventually.
I think the scary part behind all this is that if an AI makes decisions in the world, it's going to be using some sort of decision theory. And if we program it with a decision theory that we think is, all about make the humans happy and successful and fulfilled in life, but we have these natural blinders that keep us from seeing what a decision theory actually recommends, we program the AI with it, and the AI is like, sweet! Now we got to make a lot of paper clips! and then bad things happen.
Paperclip the universe?
Yeah.
There's no more suffering, everything's paperclips.
Right, which obviously, that would be one of the early ones that we would weed out, but the fact that it's so hard to actually tell what a decision theory actually recommends for us means that we have to be incredibly fucking careful giving a decision theory to an AI, because once it's running off with the decision theory we gave it, we might not be able to stop it.
And there's weird repugnant conclusions that come from a bunch of different philosophies, utilitarianism being one.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Like that's why we're donating to Miri and whatnot, so they can solve that hard problem.
Hopefully. So for next time, the two sequence posts we're going to read, these are both big ones. Adaptation executors, not fitness maximizers, which I still see brought up now and then. And the ever-dreaded, Wes is going to kill everybody, evolutionary psychology.
I sort of want to have him on just for that one. I was thinking that. I wonder if he would want to.
I mean, we'd have to maybe do an entire episode about evolutionary psychology.
I wouldn't mind.
I don't know if there's all that much to say about it, though.
If we know
I think there's a lot.
If you have any listeners who are evolutionary psychologists, I'd be interested if you wanted to reach out.
Fight with Wes.
Well, not if you don't want to fight with Wes, we can do a separate episode. If you do want to, go nuts. That sounds like fun too. But I mean,
fighting with Wes is really fun.
This isn't just like an empty discipline full of dipshits, like I think some people might imagine it to be. Right? It is a serious discipline with actual methodology and reason behind it.
I think Wes's bigger problem is when humans who are not experts try to use it. Very, very much like...
just so stories.
Yeah. Like, you're not actually a quantum theorist, Deepak Chopra. You don't know what you're talking about, except to everybody in the world.
Valid. Okay.
Alrighty. So, feedback. So this is, again, regarding Newcomb's problem, because Newcomb's problem always brings out lots of feedback. Maybe we should just throw it in. It's into an episode once every year or something. It's a doc on Reddit says, regarding the original Newcomb's problem, it seems that 1 million versus 1,000 is not enough of a motivation to make the dilemma visceral enough, which is why it seems like a no-brainer to take the $1 million and walk away. I wonder if the problem would be better restated with the glass box containing 1 dose of a cure for some disease that is killing all 3 of your children, and the steel box containing 2 doses or none, depending on Omega's prediction. Now does it seem like a no-brainer to leave the extra dose in the glass box? Which, that does make it much more viscerally intuitive why you would want a 2-box and save all of your children. But again, if you are the kind of person who would do that, you're only going to get 1 dose. Like, your choice isn't really between 3 doses and 2 doses. Your choice is between 1 dose or 2 dose.
Well, no, the one dose for all 3 children, or
2 doses for all 3 children. Because the only way you could get 3 doses is if Omega predicted wrong and you 2-box.
Yeah.
But Omega doesn't predict wrong, so basically your choice is to say, yes, I would definitely 1-box, and then you 2-box, and it turns out you only get 1 dose. Or to say, yes, I definitely 1-box, and then you actually 1-box, and you get 2 doses.
Yeah, I think, the point of Newcomb's problem was more, the question of free will than what decision should you make. But
I think they're related.
I think they're both actually part of the problem.
Would you be more tempted to take the 2 boxes if it was, saving your children or your pets or your loved one or whatever?
I mean, sometimes you get a thought experiment that just gets to be way too convoluted. Did I mention, just my throwaway joke about it, just a perfectly spherical Hitler in a vacuum?
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a cure for a disease that's killing my 3 kids, and they all 3 have it, and I get either 1 dose in 1 box, 2 in the opaque box, or 3 if I magically am able to subvert the expectations of Omega. Like, I feel like I have to just give up too many other facts about how the world really works.
Yeah,
Like,
my
like a
initial
box full
intuition.
of money I can understand. But like a cure for a disease, I'm like, all right, I'll take this to a scientist
Yeah,
and
take
get
the
more
one.
cures, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Reverse engineer
and
it.
I'm not trying to dodge the question. I mean, like, if...
You just don't want to answer it.
Well, I think it's just... I'm trying to think of another way to, like, maybe pump that intuition a little better for me. Cause
Is
it's
it
getting
the
clogged
thing
in my
of getting
pipes.
annoyed that it requires that you ignore how like the real world works? In which case, what's the point of the thought experiment?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
sometimes
that bugs me about thought experiments.
sometimes thought experiments can still be good intuition pumps, even if they're, like, completely outlandish. You know, like the baby eating aliens or something, right? But it's... with this one, like I said, I feel like I've already got the solution in hand. I just take this and get more of it, right? If it's a super soldier serum that only exists because this god gave it to you, well then, like, I'm getting so far outside of reality. Whereas, like, a check worth $1 million is a thing I can imagine, right?
But, I mean, Omega is already entirely outside of reality.
Yeah, I'm in a weird spot here, right? So, I mean, in that case, I don't know, I ask Omega to please not be a dick and let me save all my kids. Like, you know, I would probably take the one opaque box in that situation. Yeah. When do I get to open it? Like, do I have to leave the room first? I mean, it seems like...
like, once you make your choice, it's irrevocable? Irrevocable? There we go.
Irrevocable.
But, like, you know, if I take the opaque box and then open it, and I see that it's got 2 syringes in it, then I grab the clear box too, right, before I leave. So again, like, all of this has to have so many... Well, no, Omega's got a gun to your head, and you have to leave the room right after. Like,
and physics don't work in this world.
Yeah, so many weird constraints. Like, if I appreciate where the commenter's coming from, but it doesn't help pump my intuitions any better.
I would still
Not your
one
fault,
box
it's mine.
because I would rather have 2 cures than 1.
So that's my intuition as well, and yet, like, it's more visceral with, like, the lives of my kids. How do I decide which 2 get to die?
I do
Or
think
which
it was
one
a
gets to
more
die?
visceral. Like, if you ignore the like part of the thought experiment that is whether or not the predictor predicted you accurately and what that means about your existence, and it's just the part about which boxes do you pick, it makes it a lot more obvious than the money.
Well, I mean, part of the issue is that the predictor isn't, like, literally omnipotent, just incredibly fucking good. Do you want to roll your dice on that he's wrong this one time?
I mean, I could take my money I could take the $1 million I get out of the one box to Vegas and put it all on 000, and have a 1 in
32, I think? How
way
many
less.
numbers?
I think it's like...
How many numbers are on the roulette wheel? I thought it was just 32. No, 18 red, 18 black, and 2.
Okay.
So, yeah, 38. So, 1 in 38.
Fair enough. My phone tells me it is 0.026.
Okay, so 2.5%,
Yeah.
roughly.
I mean, that sounds like better odds than beating Omega, actually.
Yeah, but like I can't, model Omega at all.
I'm just thinking, like, if I were to... If I'm going to try and, like, outwit this magic predictor, I might as well just take the money that I get from the one box and go straight to Vegas with it, right?
Right.
Like, if I'm that good at just beating the odds, I'm not seeing it.
So
The
take
previous
the one
joke answer
box.
was to just walk away because magical
playing his
men
game.
coming with boxes. I'm like, okay, this is like a genie scenario here.
Right. This is
Whatever I pick, it's gonna fuck me over. But the thing is, so this did actually make it more visceral for me, where it's like, okay, so either you get money, you get lots of money, or you get no more money than you already had, and like, it would be easier for me to walk away from that. Like, no, this seems like there's some fuckery. Bye.
Yeah.
But then if it was like, okay, cures for your dying children, then the stakes are up.
Then I'm just pissed at Omega for fucking with me.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Then you just shoot Omega or whatever. It said he's a perfect predictor.
Yeah.
Not a
Can he
perfect
dodge a
bullet
bullet?
dodger.
Predict this.
Okay, that was a lot of trying to get around the situation. The other one came from the Discord, and a number of people brought this up, so I'm not crediting anyone individually, but this does come up in the classic Newcomb's problem, and is one of the things that divides people. What if both boxes are glass? And you can see already that he put the $1 million or didn't in the one box. Do you then still one box, or do you 2 box?
Did you write it this way?
Yeah, I wrote that, yeah.
Because Iriash wrote, also, both boxes glass. What doing? Question mark. Which makes me giggle.
It was the quickest way I could take a note, and still
No, I
know
love it.
what I'm
It's
trying
adorable.
to say.
But,
I mean, that seems to change the entire base of the thought experiment, right?
It doesn't at all It just changes how you think about it.
Okay,
I think
so how does it
the
not? Because
uncertainty is part of it.
I now have more information if I can see the inside of the box than if I did before, right?
Yes, you do have more information, but the important information is that Omega is trying to predict you.
Well, in the thought experiment, I could kind of give less of a shit about Omega's prediction, and I want to maximize the amount of money I walk away with, right?
Okay.
And so, if the box is opaque, and
if it's clear.
no, I'm just saying in the original.
Yeah.
And he says if you take both, the blank one or the opaque one will be empty.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm like, okay, yeah, then I'll take the opaque one because I want the more money,
Mm-hmm.
right? If he says if I can see both the contents of both boxes, and he says if you take just one, this box that you can see the contents of is empty, and I'm like, but it's not empty, I can see it. So how does that not change the original thought experiment?
Because the key to the thought experiment is Omega is trying to predict you. So if you're saying, well, if I can see that they're both full, then I'll take them both, then you'll never get the full box because Omega will have predicted that you would say that.
So then the box would be clear but empty.
Yes.
Oh. So what, is he going to pull me into a void, explain the scenario to me, and then we walk into the room with the boxes?
I mean, maybe he'll listen to this podcast and he'll be like, oh, Stephen said that he would take both if he could get away with it, so no $1 million for him. You've just fallen for the classic trap of letting yourself be recorded when you're defecting against Omega.
Alas.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so I thought that, like, I was in the room standing with him as he's explaining the rules, and it's like, you see this stack of cash? It's not there if you try and take it. And I'm like, but it is, though. Yeah, it is. If you just take that box, it stays there. So, like, barring other magic shenanigans.
Yeah, there's no magic involved. You can see both boxes.
Except for the magical
Right.
Well, except for the magical
offering
prediction
you
powers.
the boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
There's still magic.
If I can see inside the box and it's got $1 million in it, I'm taking it.
Okay.
And as long as I've got the box and I hold it and I see it still contains $1 million, which would be really heavy, we'll just call it a $1 million check, and then I see the other $1,000 check, I'll take that one too.
All right. Well, then you're never going to get $1 million, and I am sorry.
But Omega,
There's no free lunch.
if you're listening,
Walk away.
if you're listening and you give me an opaque box, I promise I'll just take the one. I do think that's different. I have new information if I can see inside both boxes. How could I possibly not update on that?
Well, the correct answer is you still one box, because if you're the kind of person who would two box when the boxes are clear, you won't get the $1 million. The point of the Omega Newcomb's problem question is, what decision theory do you want to have installed inside you? And you want the decision theory that gives you $1 million, and that decision theory says if Omega comes up with this crazy bullshit, you always just take one box, regardless of anything else, even if both boxes are clear. And so, if you do run into that scenario, if you're actually successfully installed that decision theory, you just take the one fucking box.
See, I'll take the one box in the situation where I believe this magic predictor about the contents of it.
Right.
But I don't... he's not going to convince... Again, so I think what you're saying is that if I'm the kind of person who would two box with a transparent box, he takes me to his void, shows me the boxes, and lo and behold, one is empty.
Yes.
Okay, well, see, that's a different circumstance than the one that I said I would two box in. It is.
That's true.
The one I said I two box in is where if I'm in the room and I can already see the money.
Yeah.
Right?
Then you two box.
Right.
So you've literally just demonstrated you don't have the correct decision theory installed to pass Omega's test.
No, you've demonstrated you have the decision theory that you would lose $1,000 for free.
I would lose that $1,000, but I would gain $1 million instead.
I would gain $1 million and $1,000 in the case where I'm already seeing the money. Again, if he explains it to me and he says, if you're the kind of person who's going to try and take two boxes, the second box will be empty, or the second box will be will have no money in it, then I'll be like, oh, then I'll take the one box, and like I know that going in.
Yeah.
But if I'm there and I can already see it, I've got new information to update on, namely the visible money. Mm-hmm. It's like if I showed you, my two hands and I'm like, hey, look, this one's got $1 in it, this one's got $100 bill in it, and then I'm like, if I'm Newcomb unboxing you right now, then you're like, okay, well, I'll take the 100, and you take the 100. If I show you and I've got my palms open, what's to stop you from taking both? If I said you're allowed to,
I mean, are you actually Omega? Are you a good enough predictor of me that I need to have the one box decision theory installed to get the $100, or are you just Stephen?
I'm arguing that in the second case, it doesn't matter who is telling me anything about the boxes. I can see the contents of them for myself.
Yes, but you'll never see the $100 bill or the $1 million or whatever.
Because I've committed to, you know what?
Because you take the box and either the money disappears or you disappear.
Yeah, that's
well, neither of those happens.
Yeah,
you would get the money, but
given this bizarrely constrained scenario, I'm happy to forsake the $1 million in the circumstance where 2 boxes are both clear.
Okay.
I'm sufficiently confident I'll never I'll never regret making that commitment.
Okay. You have now made it my life goal in 10 million years' time to fuck you with this.
If you can, I'd give you a high five. That'd be really funny.
Excellent.
This is what we're going to be doing in our transhumanist future, by the way.
Got to find some way to pass the
Newcoming
time.
people.
Yeah. Or maybe playing football games across the entirety of America.
That's a really funny image that you just painted in my head.
Have you not read 17776?
Oh, it was short, wasn't it?
I wouldn't say short. Shorter than a full-length novel, but I wouldn't call it short. It's going to take hours to plow through.
Okay, then I've read a summary or something, but I'm familiar with it. I forgot about that. Yeah, they play a continental continental game of football.
Yeah,
that'd kill some time.
Yes, it would.
Yeah. He's on the 333 millionth yard line.
Yeah, so that basically is what Newcomb's boils down to, and the opaqueness, I don't know, technically shouldn't really matter all that much, and that is why a lot of people split.
Emotionally.
I mean, if you would 2-box in the clear boxes, you should also 2-box in the opaque boxes, because Omega's already, changed the boxes and flown off. Or set the boxes and flown off. Yeah,
but in one, I believe that there's some magic involved about prediction of what's in the opaque box.
Well, you shouldn't believe in magic.
A god summoned me to his void and gave me a box with $1 million in it, right? And said I can predict the future. Mm-hmm. I'm now believe in magic.
Okay.
So, anyway, I think what would help, just because I'm clearly missing the mark on these, and it's not. I'm not necessarily.
Half of the populace is on your side, including some of the most educated people in the world.
Well, but I'm not even that strongly inclined with either, because I'm clearly flip flopping on a way where I shouldn't be, right?
Even decision theorists disagree on this.
But you're saying that if I am committed to unboxing in the opaque box situation, I should be committed to unboxing in the clear box situation,
and vice versa.
That
if
is
you're
not
2-boxing in one, you should 2-box the other.
That is not at all transparent to me.
Okay,
pun intended. Thank you, Jace. Got a laugh. Got a chagrin head shake from Eneasz. Exactly the intended
He's
result. He's giggling
though.
Yep.
I am, but only because I think it's funny that Steven likes to hurt me.
It is funny.
So if anyone can help demonstrate this to me with an applicable real world scenario that doesn't involve magic, sci-fi predictors, or something weird. If there's some tangible idea, like a prisoner's dilemma is a way to illustrate a decision theoretic problem. In a way that I can actually concretely imagine, right? But a Newcomb problem, I can't tie it to anything in my relatable experience.
Okay.
So if anyone can help me pin this down closer to terrestrial Earth, then maybe I'll be able to actually put my foot down on what position I'd take. So, because apparently I'm being inconsistent, even though I don't feel like I am.
That went on for a while. Did you have anything else to add?
No, that was delightful.
Okay. So that, I guess, should bring us into our main topic for today, which everyone else might be thinking here too, what the heckin' is a rationalist? What are you guys doing here? What are we doing? What qualifies someone as a rationalist? And we will decide that because we are the rationalist popes.
Well, we're going to try and figure this out anyway. So my I wanted to do this. I think our second episode was on. No, that would not have been Raising the Sanity Waterline. One of the first 5 was what is rationality.
Something like that.
This is distinct from that because I'm curious what a rationalist is. And I meant to put some prep work together. It's been a weird week. But I think we can still kind of just muddle our way through this without a lot of prep time. Because
we can talk about anything for hours.
That's true. Try and stop me. Some people might say a rationalist is someone who would obviously one-box. Right? So we don't have to get back into Newcomb's problem. I'm just tying
but
it back
that
to
would mean you're not a rationalist, and I think you qualify.
See, let's find out if so this is the kind of thing where I'll bump into people once in a while who are like, "Oh, I'm not smart enough for that stuff," and I'm like, "I'm a fucking idiot, and it's easy." either I'm doing it wrong, or I don't understand what the constraint is, or that sort of thing. So like, I'm trying to think of like just some baseline understandings of the kinds of things that rationalists do or think or have educated thoughts on or something. Maybe some requisite knowledge. You know, like you're not a biologist if you don't know what a gene is or something, right? Is there an analogy for that with rationality?
Before genes were known, you could have been a biologist, though, right?
Sure. But you couldn't be a biologist in 2021 if you don't know what genes are. You can't be or maybe let's pick another example. You can't be a physicist if you don't know...
if you don't know math.
If you don't know math, that's a good way to put it, right? I mean, you could still conduct experiments. You know, you can still throw stuff. You can still drop things off of buildings. As long as you can write numbers down, you maybe don't have to add them. But
yeah, I was trying to figure out if don't know math means like you don't know formal equations, or like could you have been a physicist, you know, in like ancient Greece by
Math?
yeah, like
There's a
figure
lot of
out inclined planes and pulleys and stuff,
Yeah.
aqueducts. So like, well, yeah, but okay, like. I just registered you saying they knew math, and you're like, yeah, okay. I was older. Could you have been a physicist in like the hunter-gatherer
No.
ancestral landscape? Well, like,
I mean,
what about creating like spear throwers
You could be...
and figuring out how like to make a bow shoot straight?
No, I mean, there's...
You don't count
there's-
that as physics?
No, there's a lot of skills that could be. There might even be like
I think
some
that's just
level of
intuitive.
engineering.
Like, it's like pre-math, but you're still calibrating based on like doing an experiment with different kinds of wood or
Yeah, sure.
straightening spears.
You could like use applied physics.
You could watch how a bunch of things arc and then sort of, you know, like on an intuitive level.
But exactly right. But I think the actual physics where being a physicist entails doing math to numbers to figure out the rules of the world. Like you cannot do physics without math, since that is what the real world runs on.
I think you can though. That's like very primitive early. But like, you know, you're mentioning like can't be a biologist without knowing what genes are, and then sort of saying, well, like that criteria would change if it was now versus in the 1800s.
I mean, you could do physics stuff. I just don't think you can be a physicist in any sense of the word without math, since that's what it's all about.
Can't be a like first, you know, hunter-gatherer physicist who figured out how to throw javelins.
No.
maybe that's a more specific case. Maybe rationalist is more akin to scientist.
Yeah.
Where in like the most generic sense, I think Carl Sagan said that anytime you're testing your beliefs against reality, you're doing science.
Right, yeah.
And scientists might disagree because that's too low of a bar. But like,
No, I think scientists would agree.
well, you know,
Well, okay.
either way, I mean,
Scientists aren't, you know, a homogenous group.
Yeah.
So
At least Sagan did, and he was a scientist.
right. I'll take his word for it. Like that's so. I mean, there's a fun little. I mean, maybe you have to be familiar with this problem to be a rationalist. I don't know. So there's the classic example from Kahneman and Tversky in 1983. Linda is 31 years old, single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy as a student. She was deeply concerned with issues... she majored in philosophy. As a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice, and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Which is more probable? 1. Linda is a bank teller. 2. Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement. So, like, I understand why the answer is 1. And I understand intuitively. I think that might be the kind of like baseline skill level.
I think that's not intuitive unless you've sort of incorporated it into your mental muscle memory. And that's what I would get at too about rationality. Like in the sequence fake optimization criteria, I think Eliezer said it perfectly at the end. To train ourselves to think clearly, ... You don't even need the rest of it. I think that's it. Rationalists train themselves to think clearly.
Yeah, and so I mean, just for the sake of fully answering this, so answer 1, Linda's a bank teller. Answer 2, Linda's a bank teller and active in the feminist movement. A lot of people picked 2. I forget the exact numbers. More than 80% of participants chose 2. So that's because it sounds more plausible given the premises of what we know about Linda, right?
Definitely sounds like she's likely in the feminist movement.
Right. It doesn't sound like she's just a bank teller.
Right. If the two choices were bank teller or feminist would obviously be by far the correct choice.
Right.
But the two options are bank teller or feminist and bank teller.
Right.
Which is a greatly constricted subset of feminist.
Exactly. So that's the thing is, any
Is it?
Mm-hmm. There's lots of feminists that aren't bank tellers.
Oh, okay.
So that's the thing. So maybe this is. I'm wondering if this is an essential part of the toolkit before one is allowed to wear the badge of rationality, or if it's not even the kind of thing that maybe it's vague enough you don't need badges or passing quotes or whatever. But like I picture things in like epicycle diagrams, right? Mm-hmm. So I've got this big circle of bank tellers that I can picture on a whiteboard, and I can draw another circle of feminists, and there's some overlap, right? And so, which is the bigger space is the one with bank tellers. Mm-hmm. So, because every feminist bank teller is also a bank teller, and it's when you add a compound statement and say and, it becomes less probable, right?
Yeah.
So I understand intuitively why that's the case. I just brought this up because I feel like it's one of the easier ways to demonstrate. Because I can't remember what I saw, what I guessed when I first saw this problem. I think it was in high school in one of my psychology classes, and I, well, given the numbers, I probably guessed 2 because it was 80% of people did, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't yet immersed in the rationalist Kool-Aid yet, so.
It's interesting though because like I do think that anyone who'd been a rationalist for any amount of time and had been working at it would, like you say, pass this test. But also, I'm not sure that it's like necessary. I'm not sure I would call it a defining trait of a rationalist. I was thinking much more broadly when you asked the question.
I think I was aiming for broad. Yeah, I picked a specific example of just like the conjunction fallacy, but something more. Yeah, what's the broader strokes you're thinking?
I was thinking like a commitment to actually knowing the truth. Caring about the truth, like for its own sake, wanting to have a territory a map that's as accurate as possible. But I mean, it's like when you define a Christian, there's lots of things that can go into Christianity. But if there's some basic
lots of Christians would define what that means differently amongst themselves.
That too, but there's some basic core teachings of the church that if you don't know them, you can't reasonably call yourself a Christian, even if you meet everything else.
I don't know, like. And
like,
then
what if you didn't know who Christ was?
That's sort of like there's people that just go to church for the donuts and the social interaction and don't believe any of that, and yet they could still call themselves Christians. Other people might disagree with them, but like.
But if Omega was handing out badges to real Christians, would they get one?
I mean, I could totally see secular Christians who don't believe in the magic parts of it totally being given the Christian badge.
I think nobody would get it because the Bible has very specific things that it says that you need to believe and do, and some of them are insane, like having to like bury your poop with a stick at a certain, like, facing north, or I think I'm thinking of dogs. But
I just like that the Pope Francis would have been burnt at the stake 500 years ago, and the Pope is infallible.
But literally, like, if you don't know who Jesus is, could you possibly count as a Christian? I know that's very specific knowledge that doesn't meet. It wouldn't fall under the general guidelines of, this is a Christian or this is a rationalist, this is someone with a commitment to the truth, but like. There's certain things where, like, you kind of should know.
Yeah, it's interesting, now that, because that's a really good illustrative example, and now I'm wondering if this is not that interesting of a question, because now it's kind of just quibbling over definitions.
Oh, I think it's still
that's
an
the fun
interesting
part.
question.
I'm glad, because I lost heart in it too fast. I mean, what's fun about the kind of, like, commitment to truth and, knowledge for its own sake, having a good map of the territory is valuable, not just instrumentally, but also epistemic rigor is a virtue. It sounds like we get to bogart a lot of people who wouldn't call themselves rationalists into our community. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Richard Dawkins.
That's actually a thing I wanted to bring up later too.
Yeah,
same.
So I mean, we get to include them in our group, even though they probably would say, maybe some of them would actually say no, right?
Yes, but before we get to that, I wanted to first see like what makes the group before we start getting to those are people in it or not things. Like one of the the reason that the truth thing sticks out to me is because just a few days ago I saw someone say, "I don't care about the truth for its own for
And
its
you ran across the room and punched them in the face.
I couldn't do that because they were on the internet.
Oh.
But
Someone's wrong on the internet.
yeah, I don't care about the truth instrumentally. I only care about it in so much as it helps me further my goals. Or
epistemically.
Epistemically,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry. Yes, they only care about it instrumentally as long as it furthers their goals. And if not knowing the truth or believing something false would actually serve them better, they would rather know that. And I'm like, I don't think.
Is that the rationalist
don't
versus
count?
barbarians argument?
No, it's
Or,
not. Like that sort of person, in my opinion, honestly does not count as a rationalist, because I think a rationalist should actually be committed to what is actually the case in the world and thinking
wonder-
that it's important.
What's an example of something that one could believe that's false but useful to believe the falsity of?
The rationalists versus barbarians. Like, I think was this from a sequence?
Yes.
Okay, I think the thought experiment, I might be oversimplifying it, is you've got like a camp of rationalists, there's a enemy camp of barbarians that are coming to attack you, and the rational thing to do would be to become like the barbarians temporarily in order to defeat them, and then I guess switch back to rationality afterwards. So like maybe, believing in stuff like gods and going into a blood fury. I don't know what like things barbarians believe, but like there's definitely, people that are better soldiers because they believe in an afterlife.
There's the example of bulletproofing in sub-Saharan Africa, which comes to mind, where regions that have the belief that you can do certain rituals to make you bulletproof tend to be less overrun with warlords because their populace is more willing to fight back. And, it's false, and any individual person who believes that is more likely to get killed. But overall, the society has less warlords rampaging through it, and they do better.
I mean, religion.
I wonder if that's causal. Like, or if that's
It's definitely causal.
You don't think that might just be like a geographical accident where these people who have this weird belief also happen to have less warlords?
This is the thing we see.
If we could sneak into one of the places that didn't have that and say, look, do 3 Hail Marys and you're bulletproof for 2 hours, like, if we could convince them of that, they would suddenly chase away their warlords?
I believe that actually was the case, yeah. It was as this belief spread through places, they became less...
There are more examples. I brought up just religion generally. I mean, it's based on a bunch of shit people made up, but also it worked to coordinate en masse, and then, like, monotheism apparently is even more effective, and other kinds of religion, like...
Well, like, the conviction to stamp out and kill your enemies is no doubt going to be good for your fitness, assuming that you've got the stronger group. But, like, it's not... I mean, if the barbarians are running over the hill towards our little rationalist camp, and they've just got, bloodlust in their eyes, I feel like... Well, assuming the hill was a ways away, we had some prep time.
Yeah, say they're gonna, like, attack in 6 months.
Then I feel like we don't need to need to leave anything stupid or wrong. We just do some homework and we sit down and do math.
Build a wall.
Right. We build a wall or dig a pit or something, right? Like we can use our knowledge of nature to win this conflict where we are outnumbered.
I mean, again, you're avoiding the question because you find it too inconvenient, and so you're assuming that you could, win it other ways to not have to answer it.
I hope I'm not doing that, because what I feel like I'm doing is just not understanding the problem. So, because I'm not trying to dodge. If the idea was, look, I guess I'm not convinced you could walk into a rationalist camp and say, look, here's some bullshit you need to believe.
Right.
Or even if you don't, maybe you give it a less, terrible sales pitch and say, hey, here's a t-shirt that it might look like a regular t-shirt, but it's actually bulletproof. Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah, you notice you can stick holes in it because damn you're too inclined to test things. But yeah, it's not permeable to knives, or it is permeable to knives, but it'll stop bullets. I don't know how you could convince people who are empirically minded of some nonsense.
Totally ties into a Less Wrong post that I am eventually going to publish on Less Wrong. I'm tinkering with it a ton and trying to talk to a bunch of people about it first, but I have pretty strong thoughts about placebomancy. But that's not... Oh, it is related, but I don't want to get entirely into that.
Like, I don't think you could convince people of that, and if there ever was such a scenario where the tribe of rationalists runs across this tribe of barbarians and they can't defeat them with, the power of the rationalism, then yeah, I think probably the tribe of rationalists would get wiped out. But I still think that a commitment to knowing the truth is part of one of the core things that makes a rationalist, to caring about what the truth is. Not just, I mean, there's some things you can't ever really know and you would like to know the truth or whatever, but like...
Doing your best.
Yeah, like saying like, I don't care about the truth, I think is not compatible with rationalism.
I do like the thing where people refer to themselves as aspiring rationalists, because we all are, like, imperfect, just trying to, do the best we can with our imperfect brains. I like the training yourself to think clearly definition. I actually...
Is that...
Oh, yeah, were you done with your
I mean,
thing?
sort of. I was just wondering, do either of you guys have some thoughts about, like, am I wrong about that? Is that not necessary? Is that not a core component? Could people get away with not quite that?
I don't know. Like, there's some people that define it as systematized winning.
Yeah.
Which I like the definition better, whether or not it's the definition of training yourself to think clearly, because the same thing you're saying, basically caring about what's true and trying to become better at figuring out what's true, seems to be, I think, the core, like, tenet there. I wanted to bring up the period in the new atheist movement where people were having the same argument about what makes someone an atheist, and it was sort of divided into two camps. One being not believing in God is the only prerequisite, and the other side was, no, we should, like, expand that definition and stand for more things, though, like, like secular, humanism should be part of it, and things like caring about knowledge and science should be part of it. And it was this big debate that I guess it's an unsolvable debate.
What got fun for me at the tail end of the New Atheism Wars, for my involvement anyway, was right around when I got involved in the rationality community, was because I remember parts of like that same sort of argument divide was one camp of atheists was like, I don't believe God exists, and the other one would say, I believe God doesn't exist. Right. And one was like an affirmative belief. And then when I adopted a Bayesian understanding of what a belief is, I'm like, you guys are wasting your time arguing about this. So I guess, and I'm not to keep digging in on the barbarian thing. I think, and I'm not trying to dodge it. I don't buy the premise. Like, maybe we can find a terrestrial example of falsehood that's useful to
the
believe.
barbarians are literally attacking right now. We have the same number of people. We could pick up a bunch of swords and fight them in crazy bloodlust, the way that they're going to fight us. And that would probably give us, but that would probably give us the best chance of winning, as opposed to they're literally at the doors right now. We can't build trebuchets or whatever.
Sure. I mean, I think I'm just having a hard time, because like...
And that would be the systematized winning definition, I think. But also maybe the caring about what's true definition, because what's true is we're all going to die unless we fight as, like madmen, go temporarily insane.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I don't see why you couldn't just fight with a clear head. Maybe I'm not sure what the barbarian is that makes it impossible to just, if it's picking up a sword and hitting somebody with it, then, I
think part of the premise of the hypothetical is that the barbarians have crazy false beliefs, which translate directly into making them more effective in combat.
Sure. If they believe that, if I die a glorious death in battle, I get to go to Valhalla or something.
Yeah.
Whereas if I don't believe that, I might be less inclined to throw myself into harm's way.
Right.
I don't think you can make yourself believe that you're going to go to Valhalla if you don't, but you can psych yourself up and get into a blood fury. Or, I don't know, take a bunch of drugs that make you that
calmly
way.
Assess the situation, Batman style or Harry James Potter Evans Varys style. And
they're at the door. They're coming through the windows.
Yeah, they're standing there. 36 of them have their wands pointed at you. What do? Do you try to become an angry Death Eater? No, you cleverly kill all of them, right? So,
but in the hypothetical, trying to become the angry Death Dealer gives you an advantage.
Right. So just imagine a perfectly spherical Death Eater in a vacuum.
Yes.
And so that's why I'm looking for a terrestrial example. Like, I remember the first time that I'd ever heard of Jordan Peterson. He was on Sam Harris's podcast, and they were going to talk about something, but they ended up burning the entire 2-hour episode because Peterson gave some weird, janky-ass definition of truth.
Oh, God.
And
fucking Peterson.
So I listened to this. I'd never heard of the guy.
Truth is what you think it is.
And I predicted in advance. They're like, oh, this guy's a religious nut job. So I go to his Wikipedia page, and he is. Because nobody who's not religiously motivated would torture the definition of truth that much.
Yeah.
But he was essentially a pragmatist in the epistemic, or excuse me, the instrumental rationality sense,
right?
Minus some core components of like consistency.
Like he believes that a religious belief is actually better for society, and that is why he dances around this truth thing, because I think he personally knows it's bullshit, but he thinks it's better for society to have it, and so he doesn't care about the truth as much as he cares about society being better.
That's what the whole book, or like a large part of the book, 12 Rules for Life, I think there were 12 rules, was about, is torturing that definition of like truth. And he really could have just like summed the whole thing up as, so this isn't literally true, but it's a useful metaphor, and then like here's how it could guide our behavior.
But he wants to throw out the part where he doesn't want to concede the part that this isn't literally true.
Yeah,
because to him, literally true is what's useful to believe. But that's always had things backwards. You know, like if me running off this cliff will result in me dying, that's a fact that's useful for me to believe. So I don't run off the cliff, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like the fact becomes. Well, actually, it seems like it would be.
The universe doesn't change no matter what you believe.
Right. And really, given like
what you believe can change your behavior.
And I would encourage anyone who's a masochist to find the first episode that Harris was on, or that Peterson was on Harris's podcast, because he seems to be saying that like if our understanding of nuclear physics is true, or you know, because they had to table the word true and just use like correct or accurate, and we set off a bomb that killed everybody, well then it wouldn't be true because that's bad for survival fitness.
Wow.
So that is the implication of what he's saying, and I have no idea how he possibly ties his shoes in the morning. Yeah. So
probably takes him like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I think I have a terrestrial example of the barbarians thing if you wanted one.
Please.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but it's close-ish. I think the draft is a good example of that. Because if you go to war, you need people to actually risk their lives and fight in a war, and the most rational thing for any individual person to do is be like, no, I'm going to stay home and I'm going to help make the ammunition and someone else can go fight the war. But if everyone takes that most personal, rational action, no one fights the war and you get run over.
There's no one to shoot the bullets.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead, as a society, you decide, okay, we are going to implement the draft that everyone will stick to, and some people randomly will be chosen to go and fight, and the rest of us will stay here and you know, support them. And, you know, you get extra props to those people that go and fight because they're sacrificing more. But even after the draft is implemented, it's still individually rational to be like, oh, I got drafted. I'm going to run off to Canada because that I'm more likely to live and that is more instrumentally useful to me. And again, nobody fights. So you have to be like the barbarians in the sense that if you get drafted, you go and do the thing that is actually, you know, more dangerous for you, less rational to you on a personal individual level because it has better long-term effects in the end overall for society.
That is instrumentally beneficial, though, for you to go off personally and fight, because it's social proof that everyone else should as well, right?
Maybe.
Like it helps make the case that, like, look, we should all go.
Are we bringing in a morality component, is what I wanted to ask.
Not yet. Let's pretend we're fighting against zombie Nazis.
No, that's not even what I meant. I mean,
oh, sorry.
Is the definition that we're trying to like decide is the correct definition of rationality, does it include a morality component? If it's, for example, like the thing of atheism, just not believing in God is all that's required, is just wanting to know the truth all that's required to be a rationalist, or are there like actions that you should also take, behaviors like, is it, and we should also care about secular humanism, you know?
I had two other things that I think also are, you know, part of the definition. I don't think just caring for the truth is enough in itself, but
it's a necessary but not sufficient condition.
Yeah. But as to whether there's a morality component to rationalism, I don't know. I think there should be, but
that's a different statement, though. That's where I came down on the like new atheist thing, where I was like, I think all that's required is not believing in God. I think that it is good, though, if you also believe these other things along with it.
Yeah,
that's the kind of person I would want to hang out with. I don't want to hang out with the atheist who, oh man, I forget his name. There was this really douchey atheist. He might still be on YouTube.
That does not narrow it down very much.
I know, but like, one in particular.
Thunderfoot.
Yeah,
Wait,
I was
really?
like, I can remember his face and his name, and he had some. Anyway, yeah,
You had me at like YouTube atheist, and my brain
exactly.
dug in
right?
and found that
guy.
name. All right.
So, like, sure, I would want to keep Thunderfeet out of our Less Wrong meetups, but, like, that doesn't mean that they're not, that somebody who has other repugnant beliefs, but, like, cares about the truth isn't a rationalist. They're
Right.
just a rationalist I don't want to hang out with.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about him or any of his repugnant beliefs. I just remembered his name and his British accent. So I guess just really quick on the draft thing, though, because I think that does help illustrate the point. But in that scenario, I think me going to war personally is actually beneficial in a rational sense. Not for my personal survival fitness, but I seem to care about more than that. I care about the people I'm protecting and other people I'm inspiring to go fight.
Okay.
Right?
But you could just say those are your other qualities?
values.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe this
they're
gets
not
too
part of
muddled.
that one.
And if it sounds like I'm dodging these thought experiments, I'm really not trying to.
No, you're actually
I'm just trying
working
to
with
to
them.
find any specific instance where it is the rational thing to believe something false. Like,
When the warlords are overrunning your area.
then, yeah, I mean, that is a good example. If I could,
You can't
thing
make
is-
yourself believe something false, but, like, say that you're
I
the
could lie to everyone in
president.
my village.
You're the president of, like, the Rationalist village, and you give out a bunch of vests that are full of memory foam, and you're like, all right, guys, these are bulletproof vests. Okay, let's say the barbarians have guns. Now, I don't know. I'm messing it up. Help.
Yeah, no, I think that helps. I think what these examples are helping illustrate to me is that I think a rationalist would be hard to self-deceive. Well,
Yeah.
let me scratch that.
They should be.
Everyone's
think-
easy
yeah.
to self-deceive, but not if you know that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't say, okay, I'm going to change my mind and believe that I'm bulletproof because it's good for me in this particular conflict.
Right.
I couldn't do that, right? Maybe if there was a drug that I could take that would make me do that, it might be rational for me to take that drug.
Well, that's
That
what
would
I
make-
was
that would
saying
make
with
me
the
stupider.
barbarians thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, what if you take a drug that... What's a drug that just makes you really aggro?
PCP,
PCP,
according
yeah.
to the movies.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So if you could just pass out PCP to everybody in the rationalist camp and then give your argument that, okay, like, they're right outside, they've got swords, we've got 30 guys each. If we take this drug, we'll have a much better chance of some of us surviving.
And that's a super rational thing to do because, you know, when you're on PCP, you're punching through car windows and shit. And, like, you know, you can tank damage that you otherwise couldn't because...
According to the movies.
Yeah.
I mean, that is why I think that is part of being a rationalist. Like, you can't just decide not to believe something.
But even the thing with the
I
PCP
have
or
a
the
whole
barbarians...
essay about this. Will you guys help me, like, proofread it? Or, like,
Sure.
after this, obviously.
I would love to, yeah.
Yeah, we can even have you, come on an episode of BBC. We
Oh,
can
really?
talk about your theory.
We could interview you for it.
It'd
That'd
be so
awesome.
exciting to be on an episode of BBC.
You could be our guest.
I think that what it sounded to me like, I don't know what this person that you encountered online that said, I only believe in instrumental rationality. I don't know what they're giving up by saying that, right? I don't care about the truth. I care about what's useful. Well, you know what's useful? The truth.
Yeah.
And you find me a good case where that's not the case. It maybe belief in an afterlife or something is useful, but if you already don't believe it, you're not going to be able to convince yourself that it's true just because you think it would be nice to believe that.
Right.
So I'm not sure what this person's even talking about. I do know the difference between instrumental and epistemic rationality, but I'm not convinced that they're ever in conflict.
I think that one is sort of the pure training yourself to think more clearly, and the other one adds in order to use that as a tool to win at life.
You don't think they're in conflict in the bulletproofing sense? Because
Not for the individual person who says I'm an instrumental rationalist, right? I don't think any of the people who are casting a charm over themselves in rural Africa to fight warlords are familiar with the phrase instrumental rationality.
No, but if they believed the actual truth, they would be worse off.
Right, they would be, but they're not rationalists.
Right, but I mean that's where those two things can be in conflict.
But not for a rationalist. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
So for somebody who already is aware of whatever the requisite recipe is for a rationalist, they can't cast that charm on themselves to pretend they're bulletproof.
I think
Right.
that's why you'd have to have the rationalist president, like, pass out fake bulletproof vests.
Yeah, you need Plato's like noble lie for people, where it's like, oh, we of the upper echelon, we're capable of understanding the truth both emotionally and intellectually, but the stupid masses aren't. We need to lie to them to make them happy with their lot.
Like
life,
the
right?
U.S. government.
Yeah, I still don't know if I'm not sure someone who is actually a rationalist could do that sort of thing. Maybe they could.
I feel like we should have David Youssef on if we do the placebomancy episode, because...
We kind of did have the placebomancy episode, we just didn't call it that.
Yeah.
Well, I have more to say about it now.
That works. Yeah, you weren't on for the last one.
Yeah.
Were you?
Oh,
When we had Yusuf on for the magic one?
Was I?
I can't remember.
I kind of think you were.
I
have a vague
The funny thing is,
recollection.
I remember it. Like, I remember it as though I were there, but then that might be me editing a memory. Like, that might be before I was...
Yeah.
No, I think that was before I was on the show, because, wasn't that the first time Yusuf was on?
I don't remember. Maybe.
Because, when my house burned down and I was stuck in Iniash's house in Denver, he put me in touch with David to talk about the funny Thor parallels. So, yeah, that was before I was on the podcast.
Okay, yeah.
But it's
yeah.
funny because I remember it as though I were on the podcast. I'm just back editing memories. It's great to watch your brain do things sometimes.
I mean, I think Julia Galef covers some of this in her book, The Scout Mindset, about, like, maybe it's useful to delude yourself about, like, the odds of your business succeeding or something.
Mm-hmm. That might be actually, another example.
That might be a good example, except for that she found that, like, a lot of people, like Bezos and Musk, gave really low odds to the success of things like Amazon and SpaceX.
Mm-hmm.
And
They just did them anyway.
Yeah. Like, Bezos...
There's a whole more complicated question there about whether, like, positive psychology works or not.
Right. There's some of that, but, like... I can't remember if she found any examples. Unfortunately, I listened to the audiobook, which doesn't quite commit perfectly to memory as well as reading something. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that she had examples of business of giant successful business magnates who got there through self-deception.
Okay.
Like the main successful ones that she profiled were like the ones who were like, oh yeah, no, I think Amazon, this online, shopping thing, maybe 30%. Maybe 30% odds. You will likely, when like pitching to investors, Bezos was like, you will likely lose your money. But there's a chance you stand to gain a lot. So you're gambling, right? Yeah. That's apparently how that went down, and it doesn't seem like he would have done better if he had just lied to everybody. He might have gotten more money, more startup capital or something if he lied about his confidence in it or something. Yeah. But for me, if I was going to start a business, I feel like I would want to know my actual, at least try to accurately calibrate my actual odds of success, right?
What if you knew you were the kind of person who had like a tendency towards depressive, pessimistic, like anhedonic states, and so it was very important that you believe that this will work?
Again, I feel like if you know you're self-deceiving,
I
can't make myself believe the sky is green, but I might be able to avoid looking up for as long as possible to just try and forget that the sky is blue, right?
I guess the question I was trying to get at is you keep saying there's no place where there would be a conflict. If there was a conflict between epistemic and instrumental knowledge, truth, whatever, do you think it is part of being a rationalist to value having the actual epistemic truth rather than just thinking what is instrumentally useful?
I think that's the conflict right there is sort of, what are we using this is it necessary that we're using this truth for something, or do we care about truth for truth's own sake?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, if believing the truth here would kill me and deceiving myself for an afternoon wouldn't, I feel like it would be the rational thing for me to do is deceive myself for an afternoon. But I'm sorry if I'm really bad at just responding to the proposed thought experiments.
No, I think you just did.
No, I mean, you
just answered.
Yeah.
And I personally, I think I might be tempted to self-deceive so I could keep living, but I think an actual deep rationalist wouldn't. That, these would be the heroes that we make statues to and look up to and be our Jesus Christ people, the ones who are like, I would rather be dead than intentionally hide or destroy the truth.
Give me truth or give me death.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, I would have to wait until I was presented with a situation. Maybe if I was giving really... It's hard not to think of emotionally salient examples, but if I was given really low odds of surviving some illness or something, I wouldn't want to just nope, I'm going to be in the 1% that makes it, so I'm not going to fill out any paperwork, I'm not going to, make a living will, I'm not going to sign an MPOA, because I'm so confident I'm in that 1%. That sounds instrumentally and epistemically irresponsible. So, like...
Yeah, I guess, the question of whether or not positive psychology sort of plays in there, though, like, if you were...
Even if I knew...
If you had read a study, or... No, so the two things here, that I also believe that you cannot make yourself believe something if you don't actually believe it. That's why Pascal smoking doesn't work, or Pascal's wager, rather.
But if there was a way that, like, say if I knew that, no, actually people who are, like, super, super confident about their outcome in this circumstance, their odds go up to 5% rather than 1. They're literally 5 times as likely to live. I think I'd still be like, well, that's still kind of low odds. It's like wondering if you're believing something strongly enough, like when Harry's running for the platform 9 3/4 wall, right?
Yeah.
Can I, try something dumb to see if I can make the thought experiment more salient?
Only if you admit that it's not dumb.
But I think it's dumb.
Okay,
and I can't make myself believe that.
We'll be the judge of that.
You are a good rationalist.
Say, okay, you just got your, annual physical checkup. The doctor comes in and is like, all right, so bad news is you've got super cancer. And now I'm going to give you these two options, though. If you take the blue pill, I can... first of all, you'd have to say, so, we've got a treatment that has a 5% chance of success. It's this drug. Or, we've got this study that shows that positive psychology gives you a 15% chance of survival. And if I give you this pill, you'll forget everything that I just told you. I'll walk back in the store and just tell you about the positive psychology.
But what I still know about the diagnosis...
I was going to do a red pill, blue pill thing to make it stupid, but...
I think, is part of the idea that you wouldn't know about the diagnosis afterwards, because that's part of being positive, is not knowing you have cancer?
I think, what I was imagining, and again, we can tinker with this to make it make sense, but just having a positive outlook, say, gives you a 15% chance of survival, whereas just taking this drug gives you about a 5% chance.
Could you take the drug and have a positive outlook?
Yeah, my outlook would be more positive if I knew I was taking a life-saving drug.
I think maybe if the option was the other pill is makes you forget everything that I just told you, I come back and tell you, you're in great health, everything's looking up.
Yeah. Also take this pill as a vitamin or something.
That is a good illustrative example then, because then I'm, again, 15% chance, I would still want to prepare for an untimely end, right? So if I was barred from knowing that I might have an untimely end in order to triple my odds of survival, then I would likely still, I don't know, whatever, not plan my estate properly or something, right? So that's a tough trade-off.
I guess the doctor comes in and says, here, this pill will give you a 15% chance of survival. But it's the 5% one.
That's not positive enough.
No, it's not positive enough. Huh.
Also, it's not like this sort of stuff didn't happen.
It's hard to make thought experiments.
In the not-too-distant past, there were a lot of times doctors would just not tell their patients that they had something. I think I heard it was more prevalent if the patient was female, but I don't recall now.
Yeah, well, you want to avoid hysteria. The whim can travel through the body because of emotions. So,
and that was ultimately deemed to be unethical, that the doctor shouldn't be making that call. They should tell their patient the truth regardless.
Oh, early medicine was so unethical. It's amazing.
Well, but you're painting a not obviously unethical scenario where lying to the patient might be the right thing to do, right? So, that's
why they would do it,
right? I bet they were probably wrong in their estimates about the power of positive thinking.
Oh no, they didn't even care about that. Doctors wanted to test their pet medicine, so they'd come grab your child who had, I was going to say syphilis. Can children get syphilis?
No, I'm not. Well,
why was
it's
I
possible,
saying
yes.
Oh, because I was thinking of the Tuskegee syphilis experiment and that. Anyway, they would grab your child with cancer and be like, well, taking him to my clinic, he's taking this drug, I'm the doctor. And the parents couldn't say no.
Yeah, all that stuff's
weird. They would just take your child. They couldn't receive any other treatment than the doctor was the authority and got to say what kind of treatment this kid would get. So, and it was just them testing, A/B testing random shit on different kids.
So I think the only way because this is all about at least the recent example here is about someone else being dishonest to you. So maybe the way to frame this is would it be rational as you're entering the office and filling out your paperwork. Here's my name, address, age. Do you want me to lie to you if I feel like that will increase your chances of survival? Check this box. Would it be rational to check that box?
Then, like, do you trust the doctor?
Right, then you can't trust the doctor. If, like...
What if this doctor, like, won a bunch of prizes for extremely ethical, good doctorhood and had all these awards hung up in their office? I don't know.
Like how bad Hitler is? Imagine if this guy was, like, the opposite of that, in goodness at doctoring.
Nega Hitler. Okay, let's pause this.
Take a break.
Alrighty, well, I've probably banged on about this thing for long enough. I got, like I said, 2 other things, but do you guys also have things that you think are definitional for being a rationalist?
What I liked on a meta note about, like, epistemic rigor is that seems to define scientists as well. And skeptics. And, are scientists also skeptics? Are all skeptics scientists?
Well, the first one.
Well, they should be. Yeah,
everyone should be scientist,
and every scientist should be a skeptic. Yeah.
I was saying every scientist should be a skeptic, not that every skeptic should be a scientist.
I know,
but then I thought about it for a sec.
Yeah, piling on.
I was, I was going to dive into skepticism stuff, but we'll leave that for another time. What do we got next on your rough docket?
Oh, okay. Well, the other major thing that I've always found to be important to me, and I think the rationalism movement in general, is the concept of holding beliefs as probabilities rather than as binaries, like this is obviously the way it must be. Because I think, that holding it as a probability is not only closer to how things actually...
Math is real.
Yeah. I mean, obviously something is either true or it's not in the real world, but like the probability is the best way that we can describe it based on what we know, instead of just acting like it's true or it's not true. This is like how confident we are that something is true. And I think that has a lot of knock-on effects, like being able to discuss things with people more and adjust your views a little bit instead of like, completely converting. Yeah, exactly. And being able to talk charitably with other people and maybe like consider their positions and steelman them and stuff, because you're trying to get the most correct probability you can. You're not trying to prove that you're right and they're wrong, or vice versa.
I was going to bring up just Bayesian thinking as as at least a necessary ingredient, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's there's a great little video we'll link to by that Julia Galiff did on YouTube on Bayesian reasoning, and it's like 4 minutes long. It's not going over the math, or it might touch on that. Point is, you don't need to do the math. I mean, the more the merrier. But the idea of, you said, holding your beliefs. Again, reality is one way or another. I rolled a die. It's got a number on it, right? If you don't know what it is, you've got a 1 in 6 shot of guessing that it's the correct one, right? Mm-hmm. And you know that your belief is a confidence interval, or a confidence level. Mm-hmm. Having that about all of your beliefs, because your beliefs are your map is an imperfect representation of the territory, is just it's I think the most valuable tool in the tool set. Like I said, it allows you to engage with people that you disagree with in such a way where the goal of them and you isn't to make you flip to come onto my side. It's to give you some more information. And if you already have your belief as a confidence level and not a, like, part of the muddling here is belief is a word that within the rationalist community means one thing, and ever else on earth means something else.
You are what you believe is true.
Right. You don't even see the difference. It's like, I believe the sky is blue is the same thing as saying the sky is blue, right? But being able to put things in levels of confidence makes any disagreement with your belief feel less like a personal attack, because you realize we're talking about the territory, not about me and like what I think, my internalization of it, right?
Morality part of it.
Yeah, you're not attacking me by saying that I think you're wrong about this. You're saying I think that this belief is wrong. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, being able to train yourself to think more clearly. I keep going back to that because I realize that I have benefited from having just a one-sentence definition of things that can be expanded further down. but like that still encompasses the majority of the thing. I was reminded of this example from when I was in college, and I have an art major, lol. And in the class, the teacher it was the first class for art theory or something like that, and the teacher just wrote on the board, "What is art?" He's like, "Okay, it's the first day. We're just going to talk about this all day." And it was really interesting seeing people try to define what they thought art was in this incredibly complicated way that had a bunch of like, I don't know, like, well, aesthetics, and then like, but that's like subjective, and then just like, I sort of wrote all the stuff that I thought encompassed art, and then tried to just pare it down to one sentence that still captured all of it. And it was, I'm trying to remember the way I phrased it, but like, a deliberately created thing by a sentient mind that is intended to communicate something.
Was that the correct answer?
I don't know if there's a correct answer. This was a philosophical question. But,
I was thinking, so at the end of the day, what did the philosopher say?
Oh, I forgot.
The teacher?
I forgot, actually. The teacher didn't write, what is art? Although that was what we were answering. He wrote, elephants can paint paintings, and then, like, they, auction them for money for elephant conservation, which is awesome. But is this art?
We know what art is. Art is paintings of horses.
And then, but to by my definition, no, because if the elephant if it's not a mind trying to communicate something, because it seems like what's actually happening is elephants have eyes on the sides of their heads. They can't see a canvas in front of them. You're putting a paintbrush in their trunk and they're waving it around and you're giving it treats, so they're positively reinforced to keep doing this. But the elephant's not looking at the canvas and going like, what does it mean to me to be an elephant? Like, what is life? What are things? It's just going, yay!
I am the
flail the thing, get a treat. Flail the thing, get a treat.
I am the last person to ask what is art or have any coherent understanding of what that even means. But I think self-expression is something that'd be prepared to ascribe to it pretty confidently.
I wouldn't even say self, although I think it's sort of necessarily like you only know yourself.
This is a whole nother episode.
Yeah,
no, but okay, yeah. But I was just going to say that I agree that the elephant isn't doing art; it's making a painting.
It doesn't mean that the art, it's not art. That the elephant's painting is not valuable.
For our What is Art episode, I will get an elephant to come on as a guest, and he can defend why what he does is art.
And he will win because he can beat us all up.
Yeah, my assertion might be wrong if the elephant does actually know what it's doing, or is. And they might. They're quite smart. It's just, I just liked having a solid definition that I could keep coming back to. And I think that the training yourself, like rationalists are people who train themselves to think more clearly, is a good one sentence, because that can be expanded a lot in, like, when you dig into the different, okay, well, in this scenario. But I think you could always bring it back to training yourself to think more clearly.
Define think more clearly. Give 3 examples. we can each give one.
Or, I could say, like, training yourself to be better able to determine what is true. And the training yourself part, I think, is integral, where I think the morality one isn't. I prefer the morality part to be in there as well. But, there's definitely people that I would still call rationalists, even if they're douchebags, if they're trying to do different, identify cognitive biases in their own thinking.
Professor Quirrell might be a great example of that,
right?
And not to say Robin Hanson is Professor Quirrell, but if we were to dial down the kindness on Robin Hanson and dial up the evil, I think he'd still be a rationalist.
Yeah,
he'd be a dark rationalist, but his ability to model the reality, anticipate expected outcomes, and get what he wants would all be present.
I have a weird edge case question. What do we think about religious rationalists? Because if you're training to improve your model of reality, you obviously couldn't be a religionist, and yet there seem to be religious rationalists who meet every other box, and I'm like,
I think
seems like a rationalist. What the fuck?
I think it also has to be applied to all of your thinking. I think there are religious people who self-identify as rationalists, but the thing is, they're compartmentalizing on the religion thing. They're unwilling to look at that one clearly.
They would argue with you, though.
They would, but I think they would be lying to me and themselves.
That would mean that we're keeping higher than scientists and skeptics, though, too. Like, I was at a skeptic convention in 2009 or 10, and Adam Savage gave this awesome talk, and this guy in the audience
You made it
asked
into an Adam Savage talk?
I bumped into him in the crowd first, and I was like, "Hey, Adam Savage!" And like it was like a crowded room. It was a lot of fun.
I was at Dragon Con, and the line for Adam Savage's talk was like wrapped around 2 buildings outside, spilling out of the convention hall. I waited for 2 hours anyway, but
the key is to go to a niche nerd conference with a maximum of like 1,600 attendees.
Yeah.
But anyway, the questioner came up, and the audience very patiently waited while they asked their question that I feel like took 90 seconds or 2 full minutes, where he was pointing out holes in the episode that they did on the Mythbusters about the moon landing being fake. And
wait, was this a like pro going to the moon is fake person?
yeah, but they paid I forget what it cost, hundreds of dollars at least to attend a Skeptic conference, and probably not just to bug Adam Savage. They probably check all the other boxes. Yeah. They're like, no, look, of course, no aliens, no, religion's out, obviously, yeah, no, homeopathy's bullshit. But this moon landing thing, I think it's also bullshit. I think you guys are all deceived. So I think that's where this guy was coming from, and it was really funny because the guy asked this question with like 1,000 sub questions in it, and then everyone's just very patiently waiting, and then Adam at the end of it, he's like, you know, I never thought of it that way. Like, because what did he say? It was like there were like 30 questions in there, right? I think his full answer was, you know, I never pretended like our episode was like the be-all, end-all. We just checked these things, and this is what we could find with the equipment we had.
And this is the conclusion we came to.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm getting at is, like, I think this guy's a skeptic. You know, he's advocating for all the important things that skeptics care about, I think, other than the moon landing thing. So it's like, I mean, if we look at
other than the moon landing thing, I think also precludes him.
If we look at rationality like a martial art, and somebody's a really good fighter, but they can't kick with their left foot, like, or they refuse to.
Right? Like, if they're unwilling to, you know, fix one move that they do really badly, and they're just like, nope, I'm the best at fucking karate chopping, and I'm not going to try to fix that. I think that precludes them from being a martial artist.
Or they're convinced that any other way of doing it is subpar or something. Yeah.
Like, I also think you're allowed to be
dogmatic.
Wrong about some things because
you're allowed to. Yeah, but in good faith.
Yeah. The world is hard and confusing, and there's, you know, you don't know if you're the wrong one or the other person's the wrong one necessarily. But yeah, like at some point when it comes to fucking gods and religion, like it's kind of a easy bar to clear. How are you failing that?
Maybe add to the definition.
But also, like, there's legit rationalists out there that just happen to be crazy in the religion department, and I'm not sure that someone could just say, no, you're not a rationalist because you believe in this stupid Jesus stuff or Moses stuff or whatever your religion is.
I feel like Yudkowsky had a line somewhere once where it was like, you know, you don't get a lot of points for like clearing the God question, like, because it's also like clearing the werewolf question, right?
Yeah,
and it's like so it's about as hard. Now there's more obviously emotional and societal barriers to hurdling the religion question, but
yeah, I think part of being a rationalist though is having to look at hard things and make decisions about them. I like ran into that with social justice stuff early on, or like transgender stuff, where it's funny that I came down on social justice and up on trans stuff, but like
yeah, and that's the thing, like then someone else could say, but you are just so very obviously wrong about so and so, and how could you possibly consider yourself a rationalist when you're so wrong about this one thing? And I might be like, hey,
it's not being wrong, it's being unwilling to like look at the thing.
Yeah.
Cryonics might be a good example of this. A lot of people, a lot of well-respected, rational people that I respect their takes on things, thinks it's a complete waste of time and effort.
Which thing is it?
Cryonic preservation. The investment isn't worth it. You know, the odds of it working are so low.
Well, and for me, it would depend on whether they've actually thought about it, done the like research, and calculated it against their values and whatnot, versus somebody who just has a dogmatic opinion about it.
There's some people that just don't value continuing to exist all that much.
Yeah, and if they're one of those people, and they could have just made that decision rationally.
Yeah, so if that's their take on it, then that's fine. If they're thinking, no, I ran the same calculus you did, I just think that my estimates for these 8 conditions are lower than yours, and I'm giving it a 0.0002% chance of working. Your 8% chance guess is just purely wishful thinking. I think that we can have an earnest and fair disagreement there, right? We've engaged in the same thought process with the same tools. We just assigned different priors to things, and presumably one of us would update, right? Like our odds, those of us who are signed up, our odds of being confident in successful resuscitation should go down after that incident in Russia last month, right?
Jesus.
I did volunteer EMS resuscitation. I mean, like, it was actually, like, told to me by veterans on the squad, like, so here's what we do. We show up, we do all the CPR, we do it correctly by the books, and if you need to do CPR, they're dead. It's like, you have to sort of come into it with that mindset, because otherwise, like, it's gonna really fuck you up. But the thing is, if you do CPR for 10 minutes while the ambulance comes, you did the best you could do. But yeah, like, no, resuscitation, CPR, even like defibrillators, etc. Like, we're still really bad at that.
Yeah.
And there's still sometimes like miraculous recoveries. So you follow the protocol.
People have a greatly inflated sense of how often CPR is successful.
Watch movies, and they think that also you could like safely knock someone out by hitting them on the head or giving them a gas.
Yeah,
you can't.
Yeah, so I guess I'm trying to imagine taking the chronic situation with somebody who looked at the evidence honestly and with as little bias as they could possibly muster, and looked at the religion question and came down on, no, I'm pretty sure it's true. I wonder how they do that. Like, I
think self-deception.
Well, I mean, I think you're right, but I kind of want to just give it a little more charity than that for at least 30 seconds while I try to imagine what it would be like. Because I think they're obviously wrong. Otherwise, I'd be religious, right?
So two possible ways of doing it is, one of them is the cyber Christianity idea. And the other one...
Please explain that.
Oh, we had a whole episode about it like a year or two ago.
I know, I need a refresher.
Oh, okay.
Or let's give the audience a refresher.
That there's a decent chance we are living in a simulation. If we are living in a simulation, then maybe the simulator has some goals for what's happening with the simulation, and they're basically God, and we should try to meet their goals so that we can get out of the simulation. And that just happens to be what the Ten Commandments are for, or something along those lines.
I feel like there's no evidence for that.
Yeah, well, you had me for the first 2/3 of that. Right. If I believed we were in the Matrix and all the Matrix gods wanted was us to build a pillar that is 100,000 meters tall, like, all right, humanity, once you've done that, I'll let you out of the Matrix. And I had good reason to believe that. I would donate money to building this pillar, right? I might even dedicate my life towards architectural structural integrity, right?
I mean, I certainly don't find it convincing, but I was saying there's that's one possible method. The other one would be someone who, like Jordan Peterson, doesn't actually believe it, but thinks that it is a net social good for this religion to be believed by everybody else, and therefore, acts as if they believe it in order to try to promote it. And I mean, for me, in that case, they fail my first criteria of actually really caring about the truth, but maybe people don't think that's an actual necessary criteria for being a rationalist, and so they'd be okay with lying and hiding the truth for whatever they think the benefit is of the religion.
They're facing barbarians at the gate,
right,
and they have decided, nope, this is the noble lie we need to convince everyone of. Yeah.
I could respect that as an intellectual view. I would argue against it, but...
And also they could never admit to it if that's their actual view.
Yeah.
They'd have to play the, oh no, I totally believe that card with everyone forever. Maybe not their one significant other, but maybe their significant other ends up like leaving them for some reason, and then the whole world knows that all along you were...
You've got to lie to everyone your whole life to maintain this noble lie for everybody.
I feel like
right?
if you're a rationalist, you'd look at that and be like, that's unlikely. This isn't going to work.
Or at least if like it was the plot of The Prestige.
Yeah, I wonder...
Great movie, by the way. Everyone should see it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I want to rewatch it, because I was rewatching Rick and Morty, and there was one episode where... This is going off topic. Let me see if I can say it in a couple of sentences. Rick gives Morty he calls it a like video game reset button.
Oh, yeah.
And then in the end, the reveal is, spoilers for Rick and Morty, I guess, actually he did all of the things. He just was like shunting Morty off into a universe where that thing hadn't happened yet each time, but it did actually happen in that reality. And he ends it with going, "You got prestige, motherfucker! I've been prestiging you this whole time."
he doomed all those other Mortys to... We talked about this last episode, I think. Not Rick and Morty, but the idea of your alternate universe selves. Yeah. So he doomed all those other Mortys for his own benefit, and all that suffering actually happened.
And then he merges them all into one, and then like they go outside, and he's just like, "Oh man, like the army's here, the NAACP is here. The AARP? I don't want to talk about it.
This was the Vat of Acid episode.
Yes, the best episode. I had missed that one the first time around, and I think that it's my favorite episode.
It was great. Yeah, I wouldn't want to preclude anybody on any particular belief they had, so long as they're willing to earnestly engage with it and, like, actually be up to changing their mind. You know, like, I know that that's a lot easier said than done. I'm sure there are things that I believe that would be really, really hard to convince me of. For example, maybe, you know, convincing you that religion is actually true, that this particular religion is true. Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, we would probably all say, well, of course I'm open to the idea. I could be convinced. And yet, if I'm being honest with myself, I don't know how you could possibly actually convince me. You know, if Jesus Christ himself descended on the White House lawn and started demonstrating his magic powers, I would think I had lost my mind, that an alien, you know, with godlike powers is playing tricks on us, mm-hmm. that the Matrix overlords were fucking with us. Mm-hmm. All of those sound more likely than the bearded guy who gives harp lessons on clouds having sent his son down to do magic, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
not
don't
sure
know
he
what
gives
it would...
harp lessons.
The angels give harp lessons.
Okay,
yeah,
I was going to say, I think they just download harp skills into your brain immediately when you show up. But maybe you do got to go through a lesson training.
And the lessons are, like, just
Are there harps
hellish.
in the Bible? Because I'm pretty sure they described angels as wheels with eyes on fire.
Yeah, the harp thing is a later interpolation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wheels with eyes on fire to harp. I gotta see how that happened.
Well, there's a number of different types of angels in the Bible. It's not just those, but
I like the
some of
weird
them are harps
psychedelic
and some of
ones.
them
Yeah.
are wheeled fire demons. Okay.
yeah.
All right. So, like I said, there are some things that I think it would be next to impossible to convince me of, and yet I try to be epistemically honest and open to anything. Right? Mm-hmm. It's
Like, see, that's the thing that he said, that Eliezer said in the sequence we read today, that no matter how bad your factual error is, if you could implement the actual methods of rationality without error, you could, without the biases that we're kind of stuck with, you could recover from any error, even something as crazy as believing in the God thing.
totally.
So that's why you don't want to preclude anyone, because you're like, everything is recoverable if it's a belief, but on the other hand, like, I kind of feel like there should be some standards.
Yeah, I mean, like, by preclude, it's not like a condemnation. It's just sort of noticing, like, this person is practicing rationality correctly, and this person is not doing it in good faith. That doesn't mean they're a bad person either. Like, the thing is, like, I was saying, I'm not trying to make a judgment call. I'm just literally, like, this is how you do rationality correctly. This other thing is not. It doesn't mean the person is bad, or, like, maybe it means they're bad from I don't know. I would prefer that they practice rationality in good faith, but, like...
And even asking the question, what is a rationalist, implies that there's people that aren't rationalists, and so there'd have to be some exclusions as to what counts and what doesn't, right?
Some people, I think, would just be fine to be like, you know, I've got other priorities. I don't really care about, you know...
I'm a virtue ethicist.
Or like, I'm not super into, you know, what is truth. I'm not a big science, you know, reader. I more appreciate art history and working with the community or something.
Yeah, no.
Like, if somebody just has different priorities, they might just opt out of being in the rationalist community, right?
Right, no, I get all that. I'm more concerned, like, I'm not sure, do you want to be a community that's slightly restrictive, or... I also don't want to end up being a community where, like, as long as you say you're a rationalist, you know, because I think that's just not true.
Yeah, no, I was just giving at least one example where you said that implies that some people aren't. I'm like, well, some people aren't because they don't want to be.
Like, kick people out of the community. First of all, I don't have that authority, and I don't think anyone does. We're not centrally, you know.
We have ban powers on the Discord.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but, like,
We have a podcast. We are basically popes.
what I was getting at was that I wouldn't kick anybody out, but I would argue with them every time they show up. And I would kick them out if they were being a troll about it.
Right.
You know, like, if we got a, like, moon landing hoax person that was just spamming up threads for a bit.
Yeah.
Kind of like...
I mean, I don't even, like, at rationalist meetups, I don't even care if everyone there is a rationalist necessarily, you know? I'm cool hanging out with people that aren't rationalists. It's more along the lines of, like, would I not challenge them if they go around saying they're a rationalist? And I'd be like, now hold up a minute.
I worked hard to get to where I am. You don't get to just call yourself that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I would give them time to, like, say if someone joined the Discord and they're like, hey, I'm here. You know, I want to talk to you guys about why I think ghosts are real. No, I mean, just, you know, someone picking an example, and I'm not shitting on people who believe in ghosts. My own assessment of the evidence is that they're probably not real. If they came to it and they discussed it and they're like, okay, you haven't changed our mind yet, but I'll think about it, and we don't, I've given my piece and I've heard your pieces, and they, I wouldn't kick them out of the group. I wouldn't, I might not see their decision change in real time. I just plant that seed of thought in them, and then as it sits there and cooks for 3 years, they realize like, oh, you know what? I don't believe this anymore. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, if someone came in and was just like full on lizard people, the Earth is 1,000 years old.
Buy gold.
What? Oh, buy gold.
I mean, we've had a few people show up in the server every now and then who are like, I'm a rationalist and I have discovered this amazing thing, and I'm like,
yeah,
I don't think you're a rationalist, but I'm not going to say anything. And maybe I should say things like,
prove it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they actually are always hit with prove it, and then usually they leave the server after a few days.
See, perfect.
Yeah, but yeah.
If they stayed though and were willing to, in good faith, engage with the arguments and then like update, then I would call them a rationalist. In fact,
I feel like what this is all the central piece that these kind of conclusions are hitting is that as long as someone's actually open to changing their mind. And that includes us. Mm-hmm. Someone came to me with really good evidence of ghosts. I'd be stoked. I want to believe ghosts are real. So if anything,
most people claim things like, "Oh, I'm open to changing my mind."
Right.
It's just that, but you can't prove Christianity ain't the true way to them.
And it's one thing to say I'm open to changing my mind. Another thing to actually be open to changing your mind.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I admit that there's probably subjects like that I'm unaware of that I'm like not budgeable on. Mm-hmm. I tried to be honest with myself about like what would take me to convince me that Christianity was real.
Right.
But I mean, I'm sure there's an easier target.
I have
that maybe I'm irrational on. If you guys ever find it, point it out to me.
I mean, we're close enough to you that we're probably irrational and blind in the same
yeah,
thing.
We're in a bubble here.
Right.
No, I actually had, the experience of coming into the rationalist community, and I read the sequences in it. The politics is the mind killer actually really made a big impact on me. Maybe not even that sequence itself, but reading other things that referenced it, or just sort of by osmosis, realizing that was one of our values. And I definitely had beliefs that I didn't want to let go of, that I was afraid to point a lens at. But what I ended up doing was sort of, I'm going to like hit all this low-hanging fruit first. I mostly hung out on like Gwern.net. I was, interested in brains and nootropics and habits and that kind of stuff. And like, over time, eventually was like, all right, like, should I continue to call myself a feminist? Or like, all right, am I trans? Or, okay, is IQ real? Mm-hmm. Painful shit to, look at.
What was the last one? Is what real?
IQ.
I thought you said IKEA, and I'm like, I think so.
I don't know.
It's a plot.
I feel like I've been there, but it also felt very surreal the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it was a dream. Yeah, I mean, one thing I did change my mind on after entering the community, and I'm sure there's a bunch, but just because it's already come up in the conversation, cryonics. My first exposure to it was like, what, like Futurama? You guys gotta be kidding me. Heads in jars? And then having heard some vague thing and had the standard rebuttals of like, when you put a strawberry in the freezer and you pull the strawberry out, it's mush, right? It ruins it, the structural integrity of it. I put that in a dumb voice. I shouldn't have. That is a fair objection if you're unfamiliar with the cryopreservation process.
Yeah.
And so...
it's still a good objection, too. Like, it's still going to be destructive to some extent. We're better at making it... We've gotten better at making it less destructive, but we were actually, like, while we were on break, talking about brain plasticization versus freezing.
Yeah.
And it's still sort of a trade-off, because it's less destructive if you just have your brain plasticized. But
it's also...
I brought up, a bunch of your neurons are not in your brain.
Yeah, it's a tough spot, and I think it's one of those where, and this is just like one of my general lessons, if you hear about like this new thing that like a lot of smart people take very seriously, and you can debunk it in 5 seconds, you probably don't understand it completely yet. If you're going to go ahead and Ken Ham this and be like, well, your grandpa wasn't an ape, and that's what these evolutionists are saying, therefore we all know evolution's false. Like, if your rebuttal is that quick and easy, I think you don't understand the actual thing that you're trying to rebut. So if you feel like you can dismiss something, again, that, well, how do you define intelligent people? How do you trust authorities? How do you pick which authorities to trust?
Right.
You know,
A lot more definitions of it here.
If we were just to, you know, kind of noodle on this for 1 second, the majority of the planet is religious. You know, does that count as Bayesian evidence that there's something to believe there, or do we just think that everyone else is wrong? I think that everyone else is wrong, but the fact that so many people believe it in general, people believe things that are true. Yeah. So
social proof is the thing.
It sounds like very weak evidence that there's something going on there, right? Now, I don't think that's the case, and I think that there's probably good decision theoretic or Bayesian ways of mathematically refuting that sort of thing. But
sorry, I thought you were saying something else.
No, you're good. I guess I'm saying I'm sure there's some formalized way of saying, no, look, just because you encounter tons of small bits of evidence doesn't mean you have to increment every time you bump into it.
I was actually going to say that just because a bunch of people, I mean, like, it's a good heuristic, social proof. The wisdom of crowds is shown to be pretty good, but then also, like, do all of these people believe in religion because it is true or because it is useful?
Right.
Well, they'll say they believe in it because it's true.
Yeah, but I mean...
But in general, social proof is a handy thing, you're right. And the cultural evolution part of it definitely plays a role in that particular one. I'm just thinking of, like, generic leaning on authority or generic leaning on social proof. Like, my understanding of, like, which car to buy is that American-made cars suck. And so I don't buy American-made cars, I buy Hondas.
I have a Chevy, but it was made in Korea.
Is that still true?
I have no idea.
Okay.
So that's why I thought it was a good example, is like, it would be very easy to change my mind on that. Maybe Honda in 2003 stopped caring and giving a shit about their cars, and GMC upped their game. I have no idea. So, you know, this is the kind of thing where my social proof that I've had from teenagehood might be wrong now.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. This was... I don't have... What were you going to say?
I do have one other thing, which is... It's on a different track, but I think it's also an important part of the equation.
Yeah.
So the last thing I had was the cultural aspect of it. Like, in my opinion, there has to be some familiarity with the culture of Bayesian rationalism to really be able to call yourself one. Like... You have to have some idea of who Eliezer is and what the sequences are, and maybe be aware of Scott Alexander and some of the... Like, a lot of that stuff, you don't have to read them directly. A lot of it you get just from osmosis. Most Christians have never read the Bible.
I was going to use that as an example, and I think you could be an earnest Christian while never having cracked open a Bible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think you could be a rationalist without having encountered any of the community, as long as you, like, say you're a scientist / skeptic, and... you're already doing confidence intervals.
Then you wouldn't know to call yourself a rationalist because you wouldn't even know that there's this secret club.
Yeah.
You wouldn't call yourself that, but like we were actually saying again off air that there are a bunch of people we think actually are rationalists, just don't identify as such.
That's actually one of the reasons I was bringing this up because, Charlie has a podcaster she listens to that she really likes that she keeps saying, I think this person's a secret rationalist, because lots of times she not only like says has some of the similar tenets and habits of thought that we do, but like every now and then even a term will slip through. And I mean, nowadays I don't even know if that's a very good metric, because there are concepts invented on Less Wrong and in the rationalist sphere that are so successful they escaped into the wider world. Like there are people who use the term steelman that don't know it was coined on Less Wrong, and Pascal's mugging has been brought up in quite a number of venues now, and a lot of people don't know that as an Eliezer, original.
Paperclip Maximizer, I think, was an OG Eliezer Yudkowskyism.
Yeah, and then someone made it into like a cookie clicker style game.
That was so good. But like, I mean, once you start claiming other people are secret rationalists, that seems to me like, claiming, oh no, this person in history was a Christian, or this person in history was a Muslim.
I'm so glad you made that point.
I kind of think that the cultural aspect and the self-identification might be a important part of it too.
Self-identification, I think that is an important part of it. I mean, so you could say, be the best rationalist and then just forsake the community. Remember how last year on the most recent, because like Julia Galiff stopped doing the podcast for like a year, and like quote unquote Julia Galiff commented on it saying, "I've forsaken the rationalist community and the EA stuff. I'll elaborate later."
Yeah.
And it turns out when you comment there, you can put in whatever name you want. So someone just threw that comment on there. If Julia Galiff was like, "Fuck you rationalists and you EA people," but went on to keep doing exactly what she's doing, but just called it like better thinkingism. I think. I mean, yeah, I guess you're not a rationalist anymore if you did that, right? You've said
No.
I'm not doing what you're doing.
I feel like this is getting into, what was the idea in Greek philosophy of there being perfect forms of a thing?
Platonism.
Like, there's not a Platonic rationalism. Like, I would, if somebody says they are anti-Converse shoes and yet I see them wearing Converse shoes, then, like, it doesn't matter what they say. They're still the thing.
Sure, but there's people who say, if you follow the golden rule and do good to other people, then you're a Christian, regardless of what you actually say. And I'm like, no, fuck you, I ain't no Christian.
Well, yeah, but that's like...
The Pope
the definition of what is a Christian is completely arbitrary. Like, the Bible itself is self-contradictory, but no one can actually be a Christian by definition if it follows the Bible.
I don't think it's completely arbitrary. I do think there's certain metrics that you can meet to be or not be a Christian.
Yeah, but I mean, like...
Maybe certain minimum thresholds. Like
I
you
don't
said,
know if this...
if you said Christ was never real, or, that whole thing's made up, all the Bible is made up, but I'm a Christian, how does that even square?
I think that this is a bad example because there's so many different conflicting definitions of what it means to be a Christian. Like, if we could find the one true definition of Christianity, then we could measure people by it. But I think that definition doesn't exist out there in the wild.
Well,
I think you can define what it means to be a rationalist, and I think that you can look at whether or not the person, cares about what the truth is and is trying to become better at learning what the truth is and acting on that.
I think that's probably where we disagree then, because I think like asking what is a rationalist is very similar to asking what is a Christian, in that there is like no direct concrete answer where you can apply a test to someone and tell. I think there's a number of criteria that you can meet to a greater or lesser degree, and that's why I think like the cultural aspect should be included in that.
Now I just feel like we're arguing about the definition of definition.
And we're talking about like legs and rubes, right?
God.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh well, they do all the rationalist stuff, but they don't say they're a rationalist. They say they're not. Which bucket do I put them in?
Well, I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson specifically said, "I'm not an atheist. I'm an agnostic," which I don't believe him in the most literal sense. I think he's absolutely an atheist, and he just doesn't care about all that God stuff and doesn't want to get wrapped up in it. So he's like, I'm an agnostic, because that lets you short circuit all that and do what you actually care about, which is the science, right? But I mean, given all that, if he says I'm not an atheist, then basically I have to take him at his word there. And I think if he were to say I'm not a rationalist, no matter how much rationality he's doing, then we'd have to accept that as well, right?
I think I've figured out what our crux is, but Stephen, you looked like you were going to say something?
I was going to say that, I was going to quibble on agnostic. I mean, I'm technically agnostic on the God question the same way I'm agnostic on the unicorn question.
I was going to use that exact quote, actually, but I figured you'd nail it because I think that was a Dawkins.
I don't remember where the unicorn one came in. I'm. It's a safe bet I didn't think of it myself, because I'm not...
It's a thing that I have seen in the atheist sphere, if that's a thing.
I'm sure it's around, yeah.
I think mine and Inuyasha's crux might be... I'm thinking of rationalist as a description of beliefs or behaviors, whereas it seems like you're thinking of the word rationalist meaning a member of this community.
No,
or like a Christian, a member of the Christian community, like...
I think it's basically beliefs and behaviors, but I think those beliefs and behaviors are included in the rationalist culture. Like one of the
you think there should be
is...
a like cult? It's sort of like the new atheist problem of, does it just mean you don't believe in God, or does it mean you don't believe in God plus you're a secular humanist, and these other beliefs come with that package, and there's this community that you
I think
belong to.
The just doesn't believe in God definition of atheist means that everyone is an atheist when they're born, because you don't have any beliefs when you're born yet. And I think that's a silly definition.
I think that everyone is an atheist when they're born.
I think they... I mean, they're not an atheist the same way they're not like a Democrat or someone who believes in free will. You just don't have any of that stuff in your head yet.
This is why I like Sam Harris is kind of throwing this whole question out the window. Just be like, we don't have a word for, like, I don't collect stamps, right? He's like, why is atheist even a word? It's people who don't have this belief. Like, yeah, I don't collect stamps. What's the word for that?
Or yeah, that's the crux there, is whether you identify as, is it thing you could use to describe someone, or is an identity that you choose to belong to or not? That's the question with the babies. Like, if having to be... Okay. If part of being an atheist means you have to be aware of the idea that there is a God and consciously reject it, then babies are not atheists. Mm-hmm. And that means, I guess, like, choosing to accept the label, identifying as such. Okay, I could sort of get into... I think I understand why that's part of your definition.
And that's basically, what I'm including. Like, I was just thinking, as a Frenchman or French person, I don't know, like, if someone had not ever really heard of France, was just raised in France in the countryside or something, like, the French culture would still be in them, and they would still be a Frenchman, even if they don't positively identify as that, right? So you don't necessarily have to be like, this is an identity I claim. It's just sort of a background part of the culture that you're raised in and the various values and beliefs that you hold that influence who you are. And I think that's why, like, I'm including the rationalist culture thing, that this is somewhat influential as to how people act and think if they're immersed in this sort of I don't want to use the word culture again because that sounds silly, but you know what I mean.
Community.
No, community. I don't know. I think I've been arguing what makes somebody a rationalist, and you've been arguing what makes somebody a Bayesian rationalist. You
can say memeplex if you want to dodge culture.
Okay. I think you're right that I did mean, Bayesian rationalist, because that's... I think the reason we adopted Bayesian rationalist instead of just rationalist is because rationalist sounded far too putting on too many airs, like, oh, we are the only people who know about how to be rational and stuff. Whereas if you say, okay, Bayesian rationalist, and then point specifically to, this school of how to think and how to train yourself to think more correctly.
Yeah, I like that. As someone who ascribes to specifically this school of Bayesian rationality and the stuff that goes along with it, as opposed to someone who incidentally is behaving rationally.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it doesn't sound so, just kind of like on the other end of it, things that you don't need. It doesn't sound like things that are requisite components are like, the ability to do high order math.
Right.
Or, the fluency in cognitive neuroscience or...
perfect metacognition.
Yeah. I mean, there are domains of knowledge that might be common among rationalists that are less common in other populations.
A lot of us are programmers.
A lot of them are programmers.
That's why your example of the bank teller was so, striking to me in the beginning, because generally anyone in the rationalist culture would at some point run into that and know it, but it's also not like a requirement. You don't have to know it any more than you have to have read any particular sequence, or even any of the sequences.
Well, and the goal was to have somebody who, is aware of the community, but like doesn't consider them part of it, as on the episode, but I didn't get that to work out today. And I was going to gauge, I'll check their answer, report back if anyone reminds me. Yeah, part of this came out at the last meetup. Someone was talking about trying to do like an actual like rationalist religion. And I was curious what like their core tenets would be. And I realized I had no idea how to answer that question.
Okay.
So I was kind of curious.
Well, now you know.
Now I know that it's very murky water, and that if they were to draw hard lines, I'm assuming they'd be somewhat arbitrary.
It's funny because I think it's not. I think it's caring about the truth and training yourself to get better at caring about the truth
and thinking probabilistically.
Mm-hmm. So we're thinking of every scientist. But you already precluded. Well, not precluded, but you said that's not sufficient.
Well, but also the cultural stuff, yeah.
Okay, throw in the cultural stuff then too.
You can't be part of the religion if you didn't join the religion, right?
Yeah, and if you don't donate to the Patreon for the Bayesian conspiracy.
Yeah, give to give well,
And honestly, if you're just donating a few bucks per episode, that's not the 10% that we demand.
And let's be real, 10%. You could probably do 30.
I believe the Mormons are saying, yes, you can just tithe 10%, but do you want 10% blessings?
Do you want to do the minimum? Are you okay with being like barely, good? Yeah.
Don't you want 30% blessings from God?
Right.
God, that's crazy.
Well, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to hit on this. Not really. I had fun. I wanted to just kind of have like a light episode. I meant to be, like I said, a little more organized for this one, but it turned into be a really fun off-the-cuff thing. It looks like I think you two actually gave it some thought, whereas I had half of a thought when I got here, so it helped drive the conversation.
Speaking of patrons, you wanted to remind the patrons about the RSS link?
Yes. There was a comment on one of the posts in the last month or two about, like, is there a patron-only RSS feed? And there is. You find it through, like, on the right side of the My Membership section of your Patreon page when you log in. You can copy that link and then just paste it into your podcatcher app, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And I only brought that up because it took me a while to find it, because when I was logged in as admin, I couldn't. But maybe I'm just blind. So I had looked on their FAQ page, and it was there. So I forget what podcast it was. I was a patron for one for a while, and I couldn't find, like, the Patreon-only exclusive feed anyway. And so it just... I guess anyway, it's out there if you guys are curious, and you get some bonus content, you get the early release, all that stuff. So,
should we thank our patron today?
Yes,
for helping us discover.
Could I do this one?
Yes, for helping us decide who is a real rationalist.
Today, Creeping Dread has helped us decide who's a real rationalist.
Very appropriate name for this topic.
Was it? I don't know. I don't think it was that dreadful.
I promise to make it more appropriate by the end of the episode.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Challenge accepted. Or something like that. But anyway, I'm always super bad at the thank the patrons part because, and I feel like I also say this every time I thank patrons, like, oh man, people listen to this? Oh no, they like us, they're giving us money. Oh, I feel uncomfortable about that. But, like, in a good way, I am just, like, blown away every time I remember that that's a thing, and it's great, and... Thank you, Creeping Dread, and all of our other patrons, and just everybody who listens and participates or thinks about cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. We really like you people.
Yeah. Jace put it eloquently. I can't...
That was not eloquent, but...
other than just commenting again on how awesome the name Creeping Dread is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the subreddit where we got one of the commenters that we talked about at the beginning. We've got the Discord, which as of yesterday had 930 members, I think.
No, don't tell me that. Oh, God.
Well, most of them are lurkers, like everywhere else on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably got 24 active people, and the other 24 people that talk are just alts of the first 24. So
Right. It's all just me with sock puppets.
Right.
Oh, could I make an ask of the patrons?
Yeah,
Or not the patrons, just like the listeners generally. Mm-hmm. I've been tinkering with this essay about... I'm trying to remember the word.
Placebomancy?
Yes, placebomancy. And I want to post it on Less Wrong, but I also just have crippling anxiety. So if I give full permission to anyone who's listening and is on the Discord to PM me and just, like, poke me to post the thing, I would appreciate that a lot.
Cool.
And yours is at Jace May Exist, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Cool. And yeah, thanks again, everybody, for making this possible, making the rationalist community a thing that exists.
And I had one last note on the community. We're recording this on Sunday, the 19th. On Friday the 17th, I pinged the entire server asking for support for a friend's GoFundMe. And within hours, several of you guys donated, and it was amazing. 2 of you left your names. Daniel Nadolny, no surprise. You're the most wholesome person ever. And Matt. Not sure which Matt, but
you guys both so many Matts in this community. And they're all really good.
So many, and several anonymous folks. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to put the link to the GoFundMe in the episode description for this episode. And on a lighter note, so that was the Creeping Dread thing I promised I'd mention. Okay. So I knew I'd drive the name home. You got called out in a good episode, Creeping Dread. But as far as the patron support, we really appreciate it. I mean, we may or may not have destroyed a mic on accident by knocking it into a coffee cup right before we started recording. So... if it is destroyed, then we don't have to, Inesh doesn't have to take out a second mortgage on his house to buy the mic.
Houses.
So, anyway, I guess, and this is just a general message to everybody. If anyone is thinking of signing up for Cryonics and is like on the fence about it and maybe I'll get around to it later, just do it sooner rather than later. You never know, like, when you might not have an opportunity to. So,
can we include links to the...
Like, Cryonics Institute.
You've looked into this more than me, so yeah, if we could throw some links there for that as well.
We can link back to our episode with Rudy on it because he talked about it a bit, and that has a lot of links on it too.
That's true.
That sounds like a good
the
one.
Links from that and put them in here too.
Yeah, we'll put some of those links here, and if you have any questions, Cryonics Institute has a frequently asked questions page we'll link to. Check out the episode we had with Rudy Hoffman, and really, I just bring this up because if you're on the fence, because I mentioned that this was one of the things I changed my mind on, I basically come to the conclusion that it was the smart thing to do, I think, years before I set up a policy and got it set up. Mm-hmm. So, quit cryocrastinating, as they call it, and get signed up if you want. If you're at all inclined to. You can always cancel and change your mind later, so...
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We will be back in 2 weeks, and we'll see you then.
Woot.
Bye, everybody.